Welcome in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. A lot to get to, and we don't want to waste any time. We want to head over to California. We're happening right now. Representative Eric Swalwell, who is running for governor, is holding a press conference to criticize what he says is the weaponization of the FBI and attempts to influence the gubernatorial race. He's answering questions now, but let's take a listen to him.
They're targeting me. I'm the only name in the race that they know, the only one that they're threatened by. Because we promised to continue what Governor Newsom has done, which is to be a fighter, protector for Californians, and to focus and not be distracted on the number one job, which this president told us he would do on day one, which is to lower the cost. Thank you so much.
All right, so that is U.S. Representative Eric Swalwell, who is running for governor in California, holding a press conference criticizing what he says is the weaponization of the FBI and attempts to influence the gubernatorial race there. He just finished that press conference, finished answering questions there. All right, that is wrapped up. And let's come back here at home. Let's take a check of the weather. It was a cooler weekend. It was actually a really beautiful day yesterday once it actually kind of warmed up into the 60s. A beautiful day is only going to get warmer from here. Let's check in with meteorologist Majestic Storm. Or maybe not. We'll get to weather eventually. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Let's get a check on the full forecast. Here's meteorologist Majestic Storm.
It's such a nice start to the week, especially after this weekend. It was still beautiful, but overall it was a cooler weekend, and it's always nice when we get to start out our Monday with sunshine and warm conditions. If you like warm weather, boy, you have another heat wave on the way with 80s returning by tomorrow. We'll have multiple 80-degree days on the way, and then by the end of the week, we're looking at some scattered rain showers. Even a few storms will be possible, and honestly, the rain part is necessary. We're still watching this burn ban for all of North Carolina in place until further notice. South Carolina, theirs just lifted today, so we'll keep a close eye on that. Sunrise this morning was at 7:13, and tonight it's not until 7:44. So if you have any plans for your Monday, it is going to be very comfortable and warm. One of those days where we start out with a lot of cloud coverage, but as we progress later on into the afternoon, early parts of the evening, a lot of these clouds are tapering off. We're already starting to see really nice, beautiful blue sunny skies up there in Monroe, Lake Norman, and some sunshine starting to peek out right here in the Queen City. Again, current temperatures mainly into the 60s and 70s. We're at 64 degrees right now here in Charlotte, but because of those winds today, they'll be moving in from the south and the west, gusting up to around 20 miles an hour. You'll notice an occasional gust, but I think really you'll notice it's a much warmer day compared to yesterday. Again, into the 60s now, but by the later half of the afternoon, plan for 70s. So if you have any plans later on today, after you pick up the kids after school, or maybe you're going out for dinner tonight, I'd say go eat out on the patio. It is going to feel almost perfect. Low 60s there in Banner Elk, 64 there in Boone, even a gorgeous day up in the mountains. We're looking at mid 70s from Morganton out towards Hickory, Lincolnton out towards Charlotte, right here in Charlotte. It is going to be very nice. I always know when those temperatures are right around those mid 70s, we always see lots of kids out playing. Make sure you're keeping a close eye out on them, and also lots of people out walking and riding their bikes. Now, overnight lows tonight are going to drop down only into the upper 50s for a lot of us. So 58 degrees out the door tomorrow. So no need for that big heavy jacket because our starting temperatures, they're going to be mild. But look at our afternoon highs for our Tuesday forecast. We're back into the low 80s tomorrow. Wednesday, we're back into the mid 80s. And I mean, those 80-degree temperatures, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But notice that drop in temperatures from 77 on Sunday, Easter Sunday, to 68 on Monday, and then next week we will have a couple of days where yes, it feels cooler, but honestly those temperatures are a lot closer to where we actually should be for this time of the year. These mid 80s that are on the way, those are not normal. Now let's talk about the rain. We stay dry today and tomorrow, very isolated spotty rain chances on Wednesday, dry again on Thursday, but really it's this weekend that we have our eye on. We're going to be watching this cold front, all right? It's going to be approaching in from the west, so watch what happens. We'll pause time. Here's Sunday. I want to focus in on Sunday because it's Easter Sunday. Lots of people, you want to go to church, you want to go to brunch, maybe there's a Easter egg hunt. So 7 o'clock in the morning still seems like most of the Carolinas were dry, but pausing time, I'd say by late afternoon and into the evening, that's when this front really pushes, and that's when we start seeing more of those impacts from that front being rain. So as of now, most of our models are indicating that the rain that's on the way will likely move in a little later in the day on Sunday, which would be best case scenario. You can see models are picking up on around 1/4 of an inch of rain for a lot of us, and you know that would be very nice because we've been telling you week after week just how dry it's been with our drought monitor, and then again with those high fire danger risks. Here's a Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Again, nearly perfect today. Mid 70s, gorgeous, comfortable, looking nice, feeling good. Little warm as we're starting into tomorrow. 80s return, mid 80s on Wednesday, isolated rain chances. And then again, just stay close to our weather team this upcoming weekend. We'll be tracking that cold front for you, letting you know, really fine tuning the timing of it as we do get closer.
All right, so that is our full forecast. So we want to turn our attention to Harvard University, where earlier we heard from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. So let's take you there in case you missed it. He talked about a wide range of things, so let's take a listen to that.
So I'd like to start at the beginning of your career. You studied politics and then law, and then eventually pivoted from that to public service. Were you thinking about public service and economic policy making at the start, or did all of that come as a surprise later? And how did you decide to make the pivot when you were in the middle of your career?
Let me start by saying, David, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to all of you for being here today. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this. Yeah, so I took macro and micro my freshman year, and it wasn't as interesting to me at that age than some other things, so I wound up majoring in politics, actually specializing in Africa. It's fair to say that my freshman major was acoustic guitar. My parents gave me a Martin D35 for high school graduation. They must have regretted that because that's what I was really working on mostly. But I did finally figure out what I wanted to do. And when I graduated from college, I really had no plan, but I did have one thought, and that is to have a career in the private sector, but also to do public service intermittently. And I was thinking about people like George Shultz, who was famous at many economic jobs, and others who had done those sorts of things. And I grew up in Washington, D.C. My parents were not, my dad had fought in World War II, and he had been a U.S. attorney, but they weren't people who were terribly plugged in politically. I was very interested, though, in those years in public policy and in trying to create a life that was partly private sector and partly public sector, and amazingly enough, that's kind of what happened.
Great. So now, jumping right to the present, we talk about the Fed as a unitary entity, but of course, the Fed is led by the Federal Open Market Committee. There are 12 voting members. You, despite being chair, only have one vote. And in normal times, there's a lot of consensus. Everyone's in agreement. Lately, there's been some disagreement. There's been votes to keep interest rates the same, but some members of the FOMC have decided instead to vote to decrease interest rates. How does the disagreement on the FOMC make your job harder as you describe the path of economic policy going forward?
You know, I don't think of it as making my job harder. I think it's, and I've found throughout my career that when you have a really difficult problem, it helps to hear from all sides. And in a way, for example, when I was a private equity investor and I was looking at supporting a transaction that I wanted to do, I really wanted to hear from the smartest people. Tell me why it's a bad deal. Tell me now before we do it. And I just think you don't really know how much you believe in something until you've had somebody really try to take it apart. So I welcome that at the FOMC and at the Fed generally. And I think it helps us make better decisions. The Fed has had a tradition of governors not dissenting, but that's really not typical of other major central banks where there's more dissenting, or I mean, they're different, depends on the central bank. And to me, what matters is a dissent thoughtful? Is it helpful? Does it help? Does it express a point of view? Can you stand behind it and say, yeah, that's very thoughtful? And that kind of a thing is not bad, and it doesn't hurt with communications. You know, I think a situation like the present situation where, you know, there's sort of downside risk to the labor market, which suggests keep rates low, but there's upside risk to inflation, which suggests maybe don't keep rates low. You've got tension between the two objectives, and I think to try to expect unanimity at a time like that where it's really quite historically challenging, it would almost be misleading to be really confident in which way that should go. In fact, it's been said that confidence is what you feel before you really understand the problem.
Okay, let's turn to the Fed's balance sheet. In 2008, 2009, that great financial crisis, there was a massive expansion in the Fed's balance sheet. And then again in 2020, under your leadership, there was a second vast expansion in the Fed's balance sheet to address these two economic and financial crises. The balance sheet has since come down a bit, but it still sits at over $6 trillion. So I'd like to hear your views on how efficacious this vast bond buying program has been, both in the 2008 and then again in the 2020 episode, and also hear your reaction to the critics who say that the Fed has become too big a player in the bond market. The Fed has become too influential. There's been a muddying of, as according to the critics, of monetary policy and fiscal policy. Do they have a point, or are they wrong?
So I think the place to start with that is the problem that people were struggling with from about 2008 to 2022, let's say, in central banking everywhere in the world is once you've cut interest rates to zero, do you have anything else you can do? Let's say you cut interest rates to zero and the economy is still clearly not flourishing and it wants more support. So do you just say, well, we're done, we're out of ideas here? And there were two ideas that were followed in the global financial crisis, one of which was to buy assets, longer-term assets, and what you're doing there is you're buying longer-term government-guaranteed securities which would hold down longer-term rates, and that should stimulate the economy, or also forward guidance, which would tend to hold down forward rates as well, or just rates generally. So we did those two things rather than do nothing. And I think in the first instance, they were both efforts were successful at restoring market function and at restoring financial stability. At the beginning of the global financial crisis and the pandemic, we had massive problems of market function. They were solved. I think the question, getting to your question, David, of the macroeconomic effects is a much less certain question. I don't think there is an accepted answer, but I would just say there's an oceanic quantity of research on this, and overall it tends to find that buying long-term assets does lower interest rates and does provide some support for economic activity. And I guess I'd be in the camp of thinking that there's something in that, but it's hard to quantify it. And I think, different people have different views on how much those effects could be. The other side of it is, QE is thought by the critics to risk all kinds of other things. So, for example, you could buy too much of the Treasury market and it would stop functioning well. We have not seen that here. At the very beginning, there was the thought that it would be inflationary. We have not seen that, or that it would threaten financial stability or even create inequality. So we haven't really seen the downside risks. At the same time, the last thing I'll say is, I remember before I took over as chair thinking, I'll almost certainly never have to do quantitative easing. So what's that expression? Man plans and God laughs, something like that. So it just, the pandemic came around and we needed to do a lot of asset purchases in a big hurry, and we did. So far, no Treasury Department has ever said, stop doing that, you're supporting the economy too much. Maybe that'll happen someday, but it hasn't happened yet.
Great. So let's talk about the dynamics of inflation since the spike in 2022. Inflation has been coming down since then, but it still hasn't reached its 2% target. Some have argued that that last mile is extremely difficult, and to obtain that, we will need a recession. Others have argued that you've gotten us very close and you'll get us the rest of the way. Are you concerned about the time duration of the path from the high inflation of 2022 back to target? It's taken time. We're not there yet. Is that a destination we'll reach, or are you concerned that the last mile will prove very difficult?
So we will reach, the FOMC is and will continue to be committed to getting inflation back to 2% on a sustained basis. That's the place to start. So I feel like we had pretty much gotten there at the end of 2024 against the predictions of almost the entire economics profession when we raised rates a lot and very quickly in 2022.
Get tax expertise without hidden fees. Switch to a token.
All right, so let's head to break. And sorry for that ad, it's streamed on YouTube, but let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to head back now to Harvard, where earlier today we heard from, or this morning I should say, we heard from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Let's take a listen in.
Were both very strong years as the supply side healed and as our higher rates had some effect on inflation. So by 2024, you had the economy growing at 2.5%. You had inflation in the 2 plus a few tenths on a 12-month basis by the end of the year. And you had the employment market. You still had the labor market at essentially full employment. So I would call that a soft landing. We had it there. Then since then, we've had to face a much smaller source of inflation, which is the tariff inflation is visible, and we think it's really just a one-time price increase. That's been our thinking since the beginning. Right now, we think it's adding somewhere between 0.5 and a full percentage point to inflation, but that's a much smaller thing than we saw during the pandemic inflation. And and of course now we're facing events in the Middle East which will certainly affect gas prices, and we feel like our policy is in a good place for us to wait and see how that turns out.
Oh, great. So let me turn to the current crisis in the Middle East and the effect on energy prices. Indeed, this classroom is familiar with that question from the last problem set, where we asked, how would you advise the Fed to respond to the rising price of oil? And we teach that when there's a demand shock, it's a pretty natural set of recommendations that emerge for the Fed. But when there's a supply shock, like this energy price shock, there's trade-offs that the Fed has to juggle. How do you make those trade-offs in general, and how do you make those trade-offs in this particular instance? And can you help everyone with their piece?
Well, maybe they should tell me. Sure. So you start with what you said. Our tools work on demand. Higher rates will tend to moderate demand, lower rates will tend to stimulate demand. And when you have a supply shock, our tool doesn't have meaningful shorter-term effects on supply. So when you have a supply shock, the first question is, do you respond to it? And the classic question has been around energy, just in general, not really speaking about the current situation, although I'll get to that, I guess. But energy shocks have tended to come and go pretty quickly. Monetary policy works with long and variable lags, famously. And so by the time the effects of a tightening in monetary policy take effect, the oil price shock is probably long gone, and you're weighing on the economy at a time when it's not appropriate. So the tendency is to look through any kind of a supply shock. But a critical, essential aspect of that is you have to carefully monitor inflation expectations, because you can have a series of these supply shocks, and that can lead the public generally, businesses, price setters, households, lead them to start expecting higher inflation over time. Why wouldn't they? At the end of a certain number of years, the inflation is now just higher, and that can happen. So you monitor that very, very carefully. Also, in the current situation, you have to be mindful of the whole broader context. And the broader context is we're still, we've been coming down close to 2% post-pandemic, but we've never actually, gotten right and stayed at 2%. So it's been a while. And we're very mindful of that fact. Inflation expectations do appear to be well anchored beyond the short term, but nonetheless, it's something as we will eventually maybe face the question of what to do here. We're not really facing it yet because we don't know what the economic effects will be, but we'll certainly be mindful of that broader context when we make that decision.
Great. So you've been a powerful and vigorous defender of the independence of the Fed with respect to monetary policy. You've also been collaborative with administrations with respect to financial regulation. So under President Biden, you collaborated in a program of increasing regulation. Under President Trump, you've worked together to reduce regulation. So on the one hand, we've got an independent Fed with respect to monetary policy, and on the other hand, we have a collaborative Fed with respect to financial regulation. I don't think there's a tension there, but can you explain to us the two different approaches and how you understand them?
Yes, so start with monetary policy. I think there's pretty broad consensus in both political parties on both sides of Capitol Hill, and our oversight, by the way, is Congress, not the administration. But pretty broad agreement that on monetary policy, the Fed needs to be fully politically independent, not reactive to political things at all. We just need to do our job and stick to our knitting. Regulation is a little bit different, especially since Dodd-Frank, where the Dodd-Frank Act created something called the Vice Chair for Supervision, who has a specific statutory assignment, which is to oversee all of supervision and also set the agenda for regulation. So the Vice Chair for Supervision, if she wants to propose a change in, for example, the Basel III Accords as implemented in the United States, she has to bring that to the Board of Governors, which is the 7 governors, and vote for it. But she has full control over supervision. So as chair, you know, the whole idea is to be non-political and not, you know, never working for or against any political party or individual, or never even considering things like that. So I think the way the law works is the chair should allow the vice chair for supervision to carry out the role that Congress has assigned to that person by statute. And that's what that is. So you'll see, and you know, the two parties really have a big difference on regulation now. So I like to think that the chair should always be someone who is working without regard to political, and should be therefore a person who can be reappointed by either side. That's always been the case. It's been, you know, Ben Bernanke was reappointed, I was reappointed, and I think it's a good test of the Fed's nonpartisanship that your appeal is really bipartisan. I think that's a critical thing. So if I were to try to impose my personal views on regulation, that really wouldn't work. So I think there's I don't want to say deference, but any chair needs to let the vice chair for supervision take the lead on those issues, and then I'm another voter, is what I am.
Great. So let's talk about Dodd-Frank and the reforms to the financial system. 2008 was a terrible crisis, and there were many efforts made in the years afterwards to tighten the bolts and create a safer financial system, less prone to these kinds of cataclysmic events. But today we look out at the world and we see lots of threats, both inside the formal banking system that you regulate and in the non-bank financial system, which is lightly or not at all regulated. So I wanted to have your thoughts on whether we're in a position of relative safety after all the Dodd-Frank and other reforms following the 2008 financial crisis, or whether the new threats actually have brought us to another period of concern. And just to illustrate with a couple examples, inside the banking system, there's commercial real estate that has fallen in value. That affects both the banking system and non-banking.
All right, so that is Fed Chair Jerome Powell speaking at Harvard University earlier. All right, so happening on the left side of your screen, top left, we are waiting for the White House briefing. Caroline Leavitt, press secretary, should come out at some point, any moment. Also below that, countdown to Artemis 2 launch. We have special coverage. Our chief meteorologist, Brad Panovich, Bessie Kling, leading that coverage for us. So again, we'll continue to have more on that here on WCNC Plus. But in the meantime, let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So we brought this press conference to you this morning as it was happening live, and we're talking about the opening of the Community Engagement Center focused on the I-77 South Express lanes. It's all part of NCDOT and Charlotte's efforts to be transparent and receptive regarding concerns and questions when it comes to the project. There have been a lot of concerns. There have been a lot of questions. And so we heard from folks there and officials there. They met in West Charlotte along East Moorhead Street, where that center is located. Bria Smith made her way there to the press conference this morning. Bria, walk us through, again, we brought this to folks here on WCNC Plus Live Impact News this morning, but talk about what is this Community Engagement Center?
Yeah, so this center will be an opportunity. It's NCDOT's and the city's way of making sure that people feel immersed in this project and every part of it, like you said, transparent, hearing their concerns, their questions, which a lot of residents have, no matter what part of, the part of Charlotte that you are in that will be impacted, whether that's West Charlotte, so McCrory Heights, Biddleville, or even Wesley Heights. So we had the chance to hear from city council members, the mayor, and NCDOT representatives about what this center will do. So you'll have the chance to have one-on-one meetings. You do schedule it. You go online through a portal. You schedule a one-on-one meeting. Any questions, concerns that you might have, if you're someone impacted in these historically Black neighborhoods that have had been here for years, decades even, you can go in, voice your concern. You'll speak with a specialist of the project, project engineer. So you're getting a little bit more than just what is put out or what you see on social media or what you hear from a neighbor or another resident. And I think that's good. We did have the chance to speak to a longtime resident, 26 years, literally as old as I am. Actually, putting my age out there. And I was like, wow, since 2000. But she's been a resident of Wesley Heights since 2000, and she's had longtime, neighbors who are now been living there for 50 years, and she tries to help them, as much as they can, because they're still learning. And that's just the beauty of what this, this project is, that neighbors can come together and really help one another and lean on one another. But that was one thing that resident did want to preserve, throughout this and make sure that they iron out. So
I thought it was interesting. She said, where did she say? Make sure I get her right. I want to quote her right. Yeah. She said, actions mean more than words. So a lot of folks in this community, in those communities there in West Charlotte, they're like, hey, yeah, you need to be transparent about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's literally what we've been hearing, because we spent some time in Biddleville, we spent some time in McCrory Heights, Wesley Heights, and that's kind of like the same message that we're getting from people is just actions. Obviously, when I-77 first started, we've heard from people and what the impacts have been, noise, pollution, So just wanting to iron out the kinks is what I think their biggest message is, and we'll have more to come from the one resident, Miss Forrest, who's been there for 26 years.
Oh man, shout out to Miss Colette Flores.
Yes, yeah.
Miss Colette Flores. And we can get you 4 and 5
4 and 5 this evening.
All right, Bria, thank you. Again, a big story here in our area. A lot of folks talking about it. All right, let's go to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We want to head east, as in eastern North Carolina, where in Rocky Mount, EPA administrator is there speaking live there. Let's take a listen in.
What we found. So it's an interesting topic. You know, I think for people who might drive a sedan, you know, you have a car that you never have to worry about diesel exhaust fluid. You don't drive a tractor, you're not operating a motor coach or a school bus, you don't have a heavy duty pickup. You might not be thinking much about this topic of diesel exhaust fluid. However, there are many millions of Americans across this country, including many North Carolina residents who have spoken up loud and clearly, calling on this president, calling on EPA, calling on the administration to be responsive to their demands and to help fix it. And that's why last August we put out that guidance to reverse the derailments. That's why we asked for this information last month from the engine manufacturers. That's why we put out the right to repair guidance last month. That's why this past Friday, President Trump announced that no longer will these depth sensors that are not functioning as well as they should, no longer will they be required. And that's not the last of the action. As I mentioned, we are going to continue to go forward as we focus on our 2027 NOx proposal as we look to get rid of the derailment altogether. It's about being responsive to the concerns of Americans. It's about being responsive to the concerns of the North Carolina families and farmers and others who have reached out to EPA. And it's great to be here in Rocky Mount. It's great to be back in North Carolina. I appreciate you coming out and happy to answer any questions about our work here on this topic.
So why is deregulation important in the work that you do with EPA, not just this specific, but there's been several different examples of this recently?
Yeah, well, we want to get it right. You know, this was my message when I was just at Cummins. I mean, we could go through a regulatory process, by the way, that is required. The 2027 NOx rule would be a rulemaking that EPA would have to do no matter who is in charge. And we could just sit there inside of our office in Washington, D.C. and make believe like we know all of the answers, we know everything, and we come out with a proposal, we come out with a rule, we say that we know best, and then we end up with all sorts of unintended consequences because we didn't get it right. It's very important with fulfilling our statutory obligations that we heed the advice, the lessons learned, the feedback from across this country to make sure that these regulations are right, that we are fulfilling our statutory obligation and we're doing it to the T with the best available reading of the law, especially after recent Supreme Court precedent. And then we're not getting creative in giving ourselves power that federal statute doesn't provide us. So, you know, another aspect that's very important in being responsive to your question is that for a long time, people who were running federal agencies would look at a law and say, well, you know, this law doesn't say that we can't, so therefore we can. And the Supreme Court in a recent decision called Loper-Bright overturned the Chevron doctrine, and in doing so said that agencies have to follow the best reading of the law. So I come into this agency 14 months ago. I inherit a big regulatory, not just workload and responsibilities, but also past regulatory decisions that are on our plate. And in so many cases, you have examples of regulations that were implemented trying to strangulate entire sectors of our economy out of existence. You had examples of regulations that were not following the best available reading of the law. And in other cases, you had regulations that were being put forth that would put not just millions or billions, we have examples of regulations that are into the trillions out of EPA, where it is so important that Congress decides whether or not that is the right decision. Yeah, that's a pretty big decision. It's called the Major Policies Doctrine. And this was another Supreme Court decision recently, in recent years, West Virginia versus EPA. And they say that An agency like EPA should not have the authority to just impose trillions of dollars of regulations on their own. We live in a republic. We elect 535 members of Congress across this country, and they shouldn't be punting the tough decisions to agencies. Members of Congress should introduce these proposals, have a debate, have a vote, and then we just simply follow the law. And my message to congressmen who might be upset about us doing something that they would prefer us to do something differently, even though the law doesn't say.
All right, so that is the EPA administrator speaking right now in Rocky Mount. It looks like he's speaking there at the Rocky Mount Area Chamber of Commerce. We want to come back out. We want to talk about big story. A lot of basketball is being played, March Madness, and fitting because there's been a lot of madness in March, even off the court. Will Wade, who was NC State's coach, abruptly leaving that position to go back to LSU, causing a flurry online, a lot of comments, a lot of reaction regarding his departure of NC State. But he goes back to LSU where he was the head coach. And happening right now, LSU is introducing Will Wade as their next head basketball coach. Again, returning there at the school. Let's take you there now. Let's take a listen in.
That family is the standard. That is the expectation. And that is why we are here today. Coach, welcome home. Welcome back to Baton Rouge. Welcome back to the PMAC. Welcome back to the flagship university of the great state of Louisiana. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium my friend, your coach, our general, Coach Will Wade. Appreciate the warm welcome. I was joking with Kent this morning. They gave me the jersey with 26. I seen if I could get one that said 22/26 because I was 22, 2 interim coaches, full-time head coach, and 26. So I didn't know if they were going to put that on the jersey, but we'll just take 26. Take 26 for now. So hey, look, very excited to be here. Great to see so many familiar faces. Great to have our students here, a lot of our alums, family, friends, supporters. Look, this is deeply personal for me to be back here and to celebrate with all you guys here today. I can't even express in words what Dr. Roos and just the administration, everybody has meant to me, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be back with my wife and my daughter. My daughter's a little taller now. They've been the foundation through the highs and lows, Caroline and Lauren, that we've been through. They keep me smiling, keep me grounded, remind me of what matters in life. And so these two have sacrificed a lot for us to be here today. They sacrificed a ton. So I love you guys and thank you guys so much for being here. There's too many people to thank for making this happen. There's just a ton of folks involved to make this happen. I want to first off thank our governor, Jeff Landry. I want to thank our wonderful LSU board, many of who are here today, and our great chairman, Lee Mallett. I want to thank Dr. Roos, who I've worked with before. We're going to work well together again, get that alignment. We've got Heath Schroyer here, same chain of command as Doc likes to say, and certainly our wonderful athletic administration and everybody involved in the athletic administration. Their belief in me and the belief in me that this is the right time to come home will never be forgotten. And make no mistake, this is home. I wasn't born in Louisiana, but Louisiana's home for me, and me and my family. And so, you know, we're coming back to make history. We're going to make history one way or the other. We're coming back, like Dr. Roos said, to try to hang a banner, win a national championship, or I'm going to be the first coach fired from the same school twice. But one way or another, we're going to make history. And it's going to be a fun ride one way or the other. Ain't no doubt about that. But we're very, very excited to be back. And look, these last 4 years, you're not getting the same coach you had 4 years ago. These last 4 years have humbled and changed me. You're getting a better coach, a better leader this time around. Now, I got the same urgency. I got the same fight, same feisty guy that you always know, but we're going to be better. And I want everybody to know with LSU basketball, like, our time is now with LSU basketball. I didn't come here to reflect and talk about the past and any of that stuff. I came here to win, and we're going to win immediately. LSU and Louisiana deserves a winner, and that's what we're going to deliver, and we're going to deliver that in short order. In short order. Listen, everybody has this notion like LSU basketball is not meant to be average, mediocre, or pretty good. You can throw that stuff out. That's not who we are. That's not who we are. This program's meant to be great. This program's meant to compete at the highest levels of college basketball, night in and night out. And as we say down here, it just means more. And that highly competitive winning program, I know what that program looks like. I've seen it, I lived it, and I know how to build it the right way. We're going to be rooted in aggression, we're going to be rooted in toughness, we're going to be rooted in discipline. And we're going to recruit competitors that want to play that way. We're going to recruit competitors that understand what it means to put those 3 letters across your chest every day. You won't find anybody that's more proud to wear that LSU and state of Louisiana than this guy right here. And we're going to find 15 players that are willing to lay it on the line for us every night. You know, our first time here, we had some top 10 offenses, we had some top 10 defense, well, one top 10 defense, we're more offensive oriented, but we were a little bit all over the place. But now I know the formula, and we're going to come back, we're going to have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense at the same time, which will allow us to compete at the level that we want to compete at. Defensively, we're going to be disruptive. We're going to play aggressive defensively and be disruptive. Offensively, we're going to be relentless, attacking the paint, attacking the rim. Then we're going to have the details and discipline with our special teams, all right? We're going to build a winning program, and we're going to build this thing quick. This is not something that's going to take long. We're going to get in that portal when it opens next Monday, and we're going to put together a winner, because everybody in here deserves a winner. To all our students, to all our fans, I remember this building when it was rocking. That Tennessee game, the year we won the SEC, I don't know if I've ever heard anything so loud in my life. The energy and the pride and how hard it is to play here when LSU basketball is unmatched anywhere.
All right, so that is Will Wade being introduced as the next men's head basketball coach there at LSU, coming back to LSU after leaving a controversial exit there at LSU, but he's back there at LSU. Let's come back here at home, and let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We want to go straight to the White House press briefing. It's happening right now. That is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Let's take a listen in.
Holy Week. With respect to the ongoing major combat operations in Iran, Operation Epic Fury is moving ahead successfully and according to plan. With each passing day, the United States military is increasing its advantage over the terrorist Iranian regime. More than 11,000 enemy targets have been struck to date, each strike further crippling the regime's offensive and defensive capabilities and creating more leverage for the United States and our allies. Compared to the start of the operation, Iran's ballistic missile and drone attacks are down by roughly 90%. The United States is also decimating the Iranian regime's navy. We have destroyed more than 150 of their naval vessels so far, including 92% of their largest vessels. The Iranian Navy has no vessels operating in major regional waterways and no ability to project naval power, which is why they've been assessed as combat ineffective. Our military continues to obliterate Iran's defense industrial base, with nearly 70% of their missile, drone, and naval production facilities and shipyards damaged or destroyed thus far, significantly reducing their ability to pose future threats in the region. U.S. and Israeli joint forces control the skies and have asserted air dominance over Iran, completing more than 11,000 successful combat flights thus far. The trend remains clear. The United States is conducting more intense, targeted strikes with devastating combat power with each passing day to destroy the threat posed by the Iranian terrorist regime, as President Trump sought out to do a month ago. It's no surprise that we are seeing the remaining elements of the regime become increasingly eager to end the destruction and come to the negotiating table while they still can. Despite all of the public posturing you hear from the regime and false reporting, talks are continuing and going well. What is said publicly is, of course, much different than what's being communicated to us privately. As a result, President Trump issued a 10-day pause to postpone planned strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. This remains a truly once-in-a-generation opportunity for the regime to make a good deal with the United States, permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions, and stop acting as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. If the Iranians reject this golden opportunity, the greatest military in the history of the world continues to stand by to provide President Trump with every option available to ensure this regime continues to pay a grave price. One way or another, Iran will no longer have the credible ability to threaten the United States or our allies, which is, of course, the overall objective and mission the president set out when he launched Operation Epic Fury. Unfortunately, even as President Trump is working hard every single day to protect the United States from foreign enemies, Democrats on Capitol Hill have failed to do the same here at home by keeping the Department of Homeland Security unfunded. Over the past 6 weeks, Democrats in Congress have pushed our air travel system to its breaking point and inflicted massive pain on Americans with their reckless political games. 500 TSA officers quit their jobs. Thousands more were calling out sick at record rates due to the lack of pay. This resulted in security wait times exceeding 3 hours at major airports across the country, creating nightmares for millions of Americans. Overall morale among TSA staff plummeted as well, all of this creating an unacceptable heightened security risk. Because of the Democrats' unwillingness to do their basic job of funding DHS, President Trump determined that these circumstances constituted an emergency, compromising American security. That's why last week he accordingly signed a presidential memorandum directing the Secretary of Homeland Security to work with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget here at the White House to use those funds with a reasonable and logical nexus to TSA operations to provide TSA employees with the compensation and benefits that would have accrued to them but for the Democrat-led DHS shutdown. This bold and necessary action by President Trump will ensure our TSA workers receive their hard-earned paychecks. It should not have come to this point, but President Trump will always do what's right by the American people, and he found a way to do that to get TSA paid. Ensuring that these federal workers who perform critical public safety responsibilities can feed their families, pay their rent, and show up to work is something the president was honored to do. But this moment should be an eye-opening one for the American people. Let's be clear about what is happening. Democrat members of Congress are more than happy to put your safety at risk because they oppose the president's and his administration's efforts to enforce our nation's immigration law. Democrats refuse to fund ICE because they want millions and millions of illegal aliens to pour into the country just like they were under the Biden administration. They want murderers and rapists and thugs to remain in your communities rather than be removed by ICE and Border Patrol agents. The Democrats created this mess. They are the reason for long lines at airports and tens of thousands of employees going without pay. Once again, President Trump is cleaning up their mess because he cares more about the American people than destructive, petty, partisan politics. With that, I will take your questions today. Here in our new media seat, we have Wid Lyman. Thank you for being here, and why don't you kick us off?
Thank you. Happy Easter.
Thank you. You as well.
2 questions for you. Thank you. There are some concerns the administration is starting to change its position on deportations, border enforcement, possibly asylum policies. What would you say to Americans that are somewhat concerned that the shift has happened?
Sure. Well, while there has, of course, been a change in leadership at the Department of Homeland Security with former Senator, now Secretary Mullen, joining the President's cabinet, I can assure the American people there has not been a change in policy. It has always been the policy of this President and this administration to deport the worst of the worst illegal alien criminals from our communities. That's something I know Secretary Mullen remains wholeheartedly committed to doing, and it's something that is overwhelmingly popular with the American people. And it's something that is necessary to protect our homeland and to prevent deaths of Americans in our country. Just last week, Sheridan Gorman, a young woman in Chicago, was shot and killed on the street walking with her friends outside of her university by an illegal alien from Venezuela who had no right to be here in the first place. And it's despicable that Democrats are currently defunding the department that's responsible for removing illegal aliens like that. And I would also add it's despicable that the lack of coverage of this young woman's case, of her life, and the way that it was tragically cut short. I saw a survey over the weekend that I'd like to bring to all of your attention. This is the media coverage of the case of Sheridan Gorman. You have ABC News has spent 1 minute and 19 seconds between 2 days when this case was first alerted. You have CBS 2 minutes and 1 second. You have NBC 23 seconds spent on the life of a young, beautiful American woman whose life was taken short by an illegal alien who should have never been here in the first place, when we are in the middle of a battle on Capitol Hill with a major political party, the Democrat Party, who wants to defund the agency that is responsible for protecting Americans. I think her life was worth more than 23 seconds on cable television, and I think the people in this room have a responsibility to report on cases like this, because it just exemplifies why the president believes so strongly in deporting illegal aliens from our communities. And thank you for the question. Dasha, go ahead.
Caroline, I have 2 questions, one on Iran and one on DHS funding. On Iran, the president has said that the administration is talking to a new and more reasonable regime. How confident are you that they are legitimate and have enough grip on power? Marco Rubio said earlier that he's not sure and it's not clear whether they will be in power. So are you also talking to other factions? As the president is trying to make a deal, how do you ensure that you're making a deal with the people who can actually implement it?
Well, that's part of the ongoing process that's taking place and the ongoing negotiations. Of course, anything that they say to us privately will be tested, and we will ensure that they are being held accountable to their word. And if they are not, the president has laid out the military consequences that the Iranian regime will see if they don't hold true to the words that we are hearing privately behind the scenes. When the president says more reasonable, again, these folks are appearing more reasonable behind the scenes privately in these conversations than perhaps some of the previous leaders who are now no longer on planet Earth because they lied to the United States and they strung us along in negotiations, and that was unacceptable to the president, which is why many of the previous leaders were killed. So again, this is another historic opportunity for Iran to do the right thing, to rid themselves of their nuclear ambitions, and to come to a deal with this president and the administration, or again, they will see the grave consequences of the United States Armed Forces, which they are continuing to see every day throughout this operation.
On DHS, how long can the administration keep paying TSA without action from Congress? And not to be hyperbolic, but given the airports were really the pain point that was pushing both sides to talk to each other. I mean, do you see a way for DHS to reopen? Is it possible that this keeps going through the midterms?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, of course, the president just can't keep signing presidential memorandums and proclamations every time Congress fails to do its job, and every time Democrats are holding our entire country hostage, picking and choosing which programs and agencies they want to fund just because they don't like this administration's policies. That's not how it's supposed to work. They voted 7 times against funding DHS over partisan and political reasons. And so, again, the president has stepped in to do the right thing at this moment in time, but the president is also encouraging Congress to come back to Washington to permanently fix this problem and to fund and reopen the Department of Homeland Security entirely.
Caroline.
Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions, one on TSA, one on Iran. On TSA, for ordinary Americans watching the briefing, how long until everything goes back to normal at airports after the president's action? And then on Iran, on the time frame, President Trump initially said about 4 weeks. Secretary of State Rubio on Friday reportedly said it might be another 2 to 4. Is 2 to 4 the current ballpark that the administration is thinking?
With respect to the timeline, again, the President, Commander-in-Chief, the Pentagon has always stated 4 to 6 weeks estimated timeline for Operation Epic Fury. We're on day 30 today. So again, you do the math on how much longer the Pentagon needs to fully achieve the objectives of Operation Epic Fury, which I will reiterate: destroy the Iranian Navy, destroy their ballistic missiles, dismantle their missile and drone production infrastructure, significantly weaken their proxies throughout the course of this operation, and then, of course, preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. To your first question, Stephen, about TSA and airports, nothing will be truly normal again until Democrats do the right thing to fund this agency fully. Again, the president has stepped in the meantime to do what's right to end this crisis that we've had at air travel and at airports across the country in the meantime. But again, Congress needs to come back. Democrats need to fund the Department of Homeland Security so we can formally and fully get these great employees paid long into the future.
Caroline.
Jonathan.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. 2 questions regarding the financial costs of the war. Back during the Persian Gulf War, 1990, 1991, Arab countries paid for the vast majority of the cost of the war. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Who's paying for the cost of this war? Will those Arab countries step up to do just that?
Well, I think it's something the president would be quite interested in calling them to do. I won't get ahead of him on that, but certainly it's an idea that I know that he has and something that I think you'll hear more from him on.
And then secondly, the cost of diesel is averaging at $5.38 a gallon right now. What's the message from the Trump administration to truck drivers who are dealing with those high fuel costs right now?
Again, we understand, we hear you, we see you. We are fully tracking this short-term fluctuation in oil and in diesel prices, and that's why the president and the administration have continually announced robust actions to provide stability in the global energy market. As you know, political risk insurance, one of those actions, allowing countries to purchase sanctioned oil just to increase the supply. In the meantime, we've worked to release 400 billion barrels of oil and refined products as well. We issued the 60-day Jones Act waiver. All of this has, with the goal of increasing supply to create stabilization in the market in the meantime. But the overall message, as we've repeatedly stated, is, again, these are short-term actions and short-term price fluctuations for the long-term benefit of ending the threat that Iran poses to the United States of America, our troops, and our allies in the region, and ensuring that this regime can no longer control the world's free flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz, which is something the administration continues to tackle day by day as well.
Jennifer. Just 2 questions. Which Jennifer?
I'll go to both of them.
Go ahead. So 2 questions. One on China and one on Iran. On China, ahead of the president's trip to Beijing, will there be a working level meeting with Secretary Bessent, Jameson Greer, et cetera, and when will that be?
I do expect cabinet officials to travel to China ahead of time. I don't have a readout on their schedules for you, but this is something we typically do with international travel, as you know. So I'll talk to the Treasury Department and the cabinet myself, and we'll get you that answer. But we do expect them to move ahead of time.
Okay, and thank you. And on Iran, if Iran is kind of cherry picking what tankers get to go through the strait now and contemplating big tolls on those tankers. Is that consistent, or how is that consistent really with the president's message about really wanting the Strait to be fully open? Does the administration support a regime or system where Iran is effectively charging tolls on these vessels to access?
That's not something we support, and I would reject that they are cherry picking. In fact, as you know, these tankers that are moving through, the 10 that were previously announced and now the new 20, the announcement of 20 additional tankers, which we expect to see over the coming days, are a result of the direct and indirect talks that are taking place between the United States and Iran. So you wouldn't have seen those tankers if not for the president's diplomacy and his team engaging on this matter, which we expect that compliance moving forward. And it's, again, something that we're working on very closely. Sure. And behind the tank in the back right there, you put up your hand very excitingly. Go ahead.
Hannah from News Nation.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking my question. I have two for you real quick. There are reports that Republicans are weighing cuts to health care in order to make way for that $200 billion for the Pentagon and Operation Epic Fury. Is that a trade-off that President Trump supports?
I've seen these reports. I haven't spoken to the president about it, nor have I heard this being discussed in any high-level meetings here at the White House. I don't want to weigh in definitively because I just haven't heard that being discussed here in the West Wing.
And then secondly, I know President Trump says we're ahead of schedule in achieving his military objectives in Iran. He laid out that 4 to 6 week timetable for this conflict, and we're now within week 5. So how do you square kind of those two?
Well, 4 to 6 weeks estimated timeline. Again, you just said we're on day 30 of the operation. I just provided you with some of the updates from the Pentagon directly in achieving the objectives, and the military has been enormously successful. I think we should all be very proud of our armed forces for what they have done over the past 30 days. The mission will continue until the objectives are achieved, and that 4 to 6 week timeline does remain right now. I don't have any updates for you on that.
Yeah, like others, one on TSA, one on Iran. On Iran, I know it's tough to engage in hypotheticals, but I feel like this is one that you could engage in if the president does seek.
Probably not, but let's see.
If the president does seek, or the United States seeks a ground war, does he intend to get congressional authorization of that march?
Look, the president has been asked about boots on the ground or alleged ground operations various times. He's obviously declined to rule them out. It's the Pentagon's job to provide maximum optionality to the president. It does not mean he's made a decision, nor would he ever notify the media of such decision as not to tip off our enemy. With respect to abiding by Congress and the rule of law, that's something the administration will, of course, always do, and it's something that we have great respect for Congress. The president does with military operations. In fact, prior to the launch of Operation Epic Fury, as you know, the administration gave a courtesy notice to Congress in the Gang of Eight, and top-level administration officials and cabinet secretaries have gone to Congress multiple times over the past 30 days to provide those courtesy briefings to Congress when requested.
On TSA quickly, I've been asked by multiple Trump supporters that have said, given the fact that the president on that Friday gave that memorandum informing DHS to pay TSA workers, I know there's a lot of negotiations involved in a shutdown of this size. Why did the president not sooner issue that payment to TSA workers?
Well, it's because of the Democrats voting 7 times against reopening the Department of Homeland Security that we came to a place of an existential crisis. I mean, you saw the lines at various major airports across the country, American travelers really paying the price for Democrats' partisan games. And so the president worked with his legal team here at the White House and the Office of Management and Budget to find a solution to take care of the emergency that we were seeing in air travel across the country. And it's because of the president that TSA agents are being paid. But again, he's calling on Congress to do the right thing, to come back to Washington, and to fund and reopen the Department of Homeland Security fully. Sure.
Hi, Lindsay Ellis from the Wall Street Journal. I'm trying to square the 4 objectives laid out by the administration with the goal of reopening fully the Strait of Hormuz. Would President Trump declare victory and wind down military operations if the 4 objectives are met, but still passage remains quite slow through the strait?
Look, as I've said repeatedly and as the president has laid out, the objectives of Operation Epic Fury are as follows: destroying the Iranian Navy, destroying their ballistic missiles, dismantling their defense industrial infrastructure that produces those weapons that have long threatened the United States and our allies, and then, of course, preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. The full reopening of the strait is something the administration is working towards, but the core objectives of the operation have been clearly defined for the American people by the Commander-in-Chief.
Questions on
president posted this morning about, his threat that on leaving Iran, he said we might blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, Harg Island, and possibly all desalinization plants. Under international law, striking civilian infrastructure like that is generally prohibited. Why is the president threatening what would amount to potentially a war crime with the U.S. military? And how do you square that with the administration repeatedly saying that the U.S. does not target civilians?
Look, the president has made it quite clear to the Iranian regime at this moment in time, as evidenced by the statement that you just read, that their best move is to make a deal, or else the United States Armed Forces has capabilities beyond their wildest imagination, and the president is not afraid to use them. That's not what I said, Garrett, and you're saying the word potential for a reason, because I'm sure some experts are telling you that in your ear to try to ask me that question. Of course, this administration and the United States Armed Forces will always act within the confines of the law, but with respect to achieving the full objectives of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump is going to move forward unabated, and he expects the Iranian regime to make a deal with the administration.
To that end, which of those objectives would destroying a desalinization plant most help?
Haley, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to follow up on Iran. When you're describing that the Iranians you're in contact with are being more reasonable this time around in discussions, what specifically are you hearing that is leading you to that conclusion, and how are you defining what's reasonable versus unreasonable in that regard?
I'm not going to detail the private and sensitive conversations that are taking place between the United States and Iran right now.
But generally speaking?
Generally speaking, the president gave you the answer. What we're hearing from them is more reasonable. They have agreed to some of the points the United States laid out, as the president said last night aboard Air Force One. But again, as for the specifics, as these negotiations are ongoing, we're not going to broadcast them to the world unless the president chooses to do so, which he has the full right to do as the leader of the free world.
On Cuba, the president threatened to tariff any country that would send oil to Cuba, but now the U.S. is letting this Russian tanker to Cuba. Is this a policy change, or is he willing to let more tankers into Cuba now?
This is not a policy change. There has not been a formal change in sanction policy. As the president said last night, we allowed this ship to reach Cuba in order to provide humanitarian needs to the Cuban people. These decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis. And as the administration has said, Cuba's non-functional economy cannot be fixed unless they undergo dramatic political and leadership change. But there has been no formal change with respect to sanction policy.
So you could expect more tankers to go to Cuba?
Again, these decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis right now.
Thanks, Caroline. You addressed this a little bit in the opening, but just to follow up, because Americans are sort of seeing these conflicting messages between the United States and Iran. I know the president insists that negotiations are underway. As you just mentioned, he's also said that Iran has agreed to most of the 15 points. We just heard from Iran again. They're saying no negotiations are taking place. They're calling the proposal excessive, unrealistic. So how do you square that? How do you explain that discrepancy between the two?
I think the American people are smart enough not to take the word of a terrorist regime that has chanted death to America for 47 years at their word. And I hope the journalists in this room are wise enough not to take an Iranian regime that has repeatedly lied about our country, about our values, about everyone in this room, frankly, for nearly 5 decades. So I think the American public are smart enough to understand that.
And just to follow up on the objectives, you've laid them out, but I know the president has set a deadline for April 6th in just 1 week. What does the president need to see to not move forward with those strikes by April 6th?
Well, I think he said it in his Truth Social post this morning. He wants to see a deal over the next 10 days. That timeline is waning, several days left, and we'll see. I won't get ahead of it. We'll see what happens in the end of the 10-day period.
Caroline, thank you. One on Iran, one on the shutdown. The president continues to say the U.S. is in conversations with a more reasonable regime, but there are now hundreds of U.S. Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEALs and Army Rangers in the Middle East, as well as thousands of other troops already deployed. So is he trying to end or intensify the conflict?
The president is focused on achieving the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. With respect to forces that are on the ground in the Middle East, it's the job of the Pentagon to create maximum optionality for the commander-in-chief. It does not mean the president has made any additional decisions. Again, he remains focused on ensuring that the Pentagon continues to achieve the objectives of the operation that was launched 30 days ago, and we're well on our way to doing that.
So if an American is sitting at home hearing him say, I want to talk, but I keep seeing them send troops to that region. What are they to make of what's going on?
There's two tracks here. The president has always said that diplomacy is his number one option and priority. Again, he tried earnestly, in good faith, to engage in diplomacy with the Iranian regime prior to this operation being launched in the first place. He wanted to strike a deal, and he sent his top negotiators to do so. They spent extensive amount of time and effort trying to strike a deal, and unfortunately, the previous regime, again, many of those leaders no longer with us here on Earth because they faced the consequences of the United States military. So if there's ever a chance for a deal, again, the president is open to listening, but it does not deter him from focusing on the military objectives that he set out 30 days ago and that our military is continuing to achieve day by day.
On the shutdown, he signed the national emergency order last Thursday, making sure TSA officers will be paid. There's still other civilian DHS employees, however, who are not being paid.
Yes.
He signed something similar to ensure they also get paid?
Look, the president will always look into ways that we can make sure that the American people are being taken care of and doing what's right by the American people. But again, it's ridiculous that the president even has to go to the length of working with the legal team and the Office of Management and Budget to identify these funds. It is the job of Congress to fund these agencies. And Democrats in Congress have voted 7 times against funding the Department of Homeland Security. Congress should come back and they should get it done. The president, again, made the decision to prevent this existential crisis we were seeing at our nation's airports across the country that was only going to get worse, and that's why he wants Congress to do his job.
Thank you, Caroline. Since you mentioned,
I'll go to you as well.
Okay, you're welcome. Since you mentioned Easter and prayers, I wanted to ask you about something the Pope said yesterday. So Pope Leo said yesterday, and I quote him, "God does not listen to the prayer of those who wage war." Can you comment on that?
I think our nation was a nation founded 250 years ago almost on Judeo-Christian values, and we've seen presidents, we've seen the leaders of the Department of War, and we've seen our troops go to prayer during the most turbulent times in our nation's history. And I don't think there's anything wrong with our military leaders or with the president calling on the American people to pray for our service members and those who are serving our country overseas. In fact, I think it's a very noble thing to do. And if you talk to many service members, they will tell you they appreciate the prayers and support from the Commander-in-Chief and from his cabinet.
Caroline, thank you. President Trump told the New York Post that a response is coming shortly to Tehran attacking Israel's largest oil refinery. Is there a timeline on that? Is that tied to the success or not of the negotiations?
I don't have any updates for you on the president's comments.
Some consider the IRGC in control of Iran.
Well, look, as Secretary Rubio said today, the leadership is very fragmented. We have really neutered their intercommunication systems, and that's part of this process of diplomacy to continue figuring out exactly who's in charge. I know they appointed a new Ayatollah, haven't seen or heard much from him, and so that's part of this diplomatic process that's underway right now. I'll take a few more. Solon.
Thank you. You listed the described humanitarian reasons for allowing that oil tanker to reach Cuba. Just to clarify, why was the administration okay with Russia sending that oil to Cuba and not other nations?
Look, again, this was a decision. It'll continue to be made on a case-by-case basis for humanitarian reasons or otherwise, but there's been no firm change in our sanctions policy.
President Sheinbaum of Mexico also said that Mexico is exploring different ways to restart some of those shipments to Cuba. Is the administration okay with that at this time?
Again, there's been no change in our sanction policy. We still reserve the right to seize vessels if it's legally applicable that are headed towards Cuba and that violate the United States sanction policy. But of course, the president and the administration also reserve the right to waive those seizures on a case-by-case basis.
And to clarify, just any more Russian oil tankers going to be allowed to reach Cuba at this time?
Again,
I know you say case-by-case, but for the case of Russia, is it pretty much green light right now?
No, that's not what I said. It's a case-by-case basis. Sure, Jeff, go ahead.
Switching topics, the president has always attended CPAC. He did not this year. Why did he not attend, and does he believe CPAC is becoming less relevant?
No, I don't think he believes that at all. In fact, he loves CPAC and has a very good relationship with the great people who run it, Mercedes and Matt Schlapp. It was just simply for scheduling purposes this year, with it being in Texas. It was best for the president's schedule and what he has on his plate right now not to go. Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. If and when
Michael.
a deal is finalized with Iran, how does the U.S. provide protection to who it's negotiating with to ensure that they can carry out the president's peace plan?
Again, that's something I'm sure our national security team is discussing. I don't have anything for you on that today.
On the ballroom, can you tell us more about this massive military complex underneath the president's new ballroom?
I cannot tell you more about that, actually, as a matter of fact. However, the military is making some upgrades to their facilities here at the White House, and I'm not privy to provide any more details on that at this time. Go ahead. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Question on the Middle East and then a question on Antifa. Netanyahu said Sunday that Cardinal Pizzaballa will be able to hold services for Palm Sunday in the Church of Holy Sepulchre after he was initially blocked by Israeli police. Did anyone from the administration or the president call over to Israeli officials to assist the Cardinal in this?
Yes, I did speak with Secretary Rubio this morning, and we did express our concerns with Israel with respect to these holy sites being shut down. We want worshipers to be able to access these holy sites. Of course, safety is a top priority, but we understand Israel is working on those security measures to reopen the sites throughout Holy Week, and that's something that we're appreciative of.
Antifa. In Texas, 9 people have been convicted by a federal jury on domestic terrorist charges connected to Antifa. The White House has previously indicated that you guys are investigating Antifa, who's funding them, who's leading them. Can you provide an update on how that investigation is going, and do you think we're going to see more charges against people connected to Antifa?
Well, I do know that there was an entire task force that was set up, an interagency task force to focus on the threat of Antifa, which, as you know, Reagan, this president declared a domestic terrorist organization rightfully, and we will continue to look into it. I don't have any updates on those specific investigations, but I'd be happy to have my team get those over to you today, as this continues to be of the utmost importance to the president and his domestic policy agenda.
JJ. On one question on landmines, there's been some reporting that American-made landmines have been spotted on the ground in Iran. Did President Trump sign off on using U.S.-made landmines in Iran?
I don't have any comment on that report today.
Caroline, whether they're being used at all?
I don't have any comment on that. Karen.
Two on DHS. You said that the president is encouraging Congress to come back to D.C. You also said yourself. How has he done that? Has he told leadership that they should cancel recess and come back?
He said it repeatedly. I think you recall. He said that he'll host a big Easter dinner here at the White House if Congress will come back and fight the Democrats on this issue, which we should do. Because, again, the Democrat Party is in the wrong here. They have voted 7 times against funding the Department of Homeland Security, which is completely egregious with everything we have going on in the world. And these brave men and women who serve DHS deserve to get their paychecks. The president wants to see that happen, and he wants Congress to come back to get it done.
On the paychecks, Caroline.
Thank you.
All right, so that is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt wrapping up that White House briefing, that weekly White House briefing that they have there. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We have a real sticky issue here that we are digging into. So it's a parking situation, parking/towing situation over here in, I guess we can call it Loso, South End area. Look, a lot to sort through. That's why we have Miles Harris is here, because I was going to sort of intro it, but Miles, you've been working on the story, and again, parking, towing. Another day in Charlotte.
Isn't it kind of crazy? We do one story and then they start to kind of ravel a little bit here. But this is like a real interesting one, though. And so just to kind of give a little bit more context here. So we talked to this guy out of Mint Hill. He said he went to like a restaurant called Supper Club over there in the Loso-ish area, parked in a building or a space just across the street. And that space has Park Mobile. Like, it has the code as you park there, paid the park there. Went to Supper Club, spent a couple hours there with friends, stuff like that. Came out and he found a boot on his car. So when he called the towing company involved with the boot and the towing enforced area, he said, "Hey, I paid to park here. Why is there a boot in my car?" And they said it doesn't matter. There's a towing sign that is put out here in front of this area. You're not supposed to park here. One, he claims that signage was blocked by another car that parked in front of that, so he never even saw it until after that. But two, it still begs the question, why is there a Park Mobile access to park in this space if I can still get towed or booted? So that's pretty much what we're digging into, trying to get some information and answers from the towing company, but also it still begs that bigger question about towing and predatory towing, whether it's, is it too much? What's the issue with that? Because he says when he talked to police, he called CMPD. He said that the cop and the officer told him that this is also like the third or fourth time that this happened at this lot this evening. So
Is there anything CMP? I mean, I guess not really CMPD, but the city can do?
So, and that's what we've also been trying to dig into as well, and hopefully kind of getting some answers with that. We know that City of Charlotte had done recently some ordinances when it comes to towing, and so reaching out to kind of say, okay, you guys put this in place, but there still seems to be a couple of issues here. What are the next steps? Looking into that. When he mentioned this and talked to CMPD, says, hey, we understand you, but unfortunately this is a civil matter. So now he's looking into civil ways of looking to kind of establish and work with this. But again, he still doesn't have his car right now. He's like, I'm not paying for the boot. I'm not paying for the tow. This needs to be fixed because, again, I paid to park here. So it's an issue, obviously, but this is, like you said, another day in Charlotte.
Look, and parking is when you get from South End down through Loso, it gets progressively worse. Like the parking spaces is tighter. I see it there in Loso, especially on the weekends. It's just like people are parking anywhere they can, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a legal parking space. Good luck, but that's just the name of the game.
And I think in those situations, obviously, there's like some people are like, okay, we're risking it, right? I would be confused, and I guess I'm asking the same question as well. Is okay, because the other part is like, not only is it there's Park Mobile signs, but how are those still usable, accessible, payable if it's not a valid space to park at? So still a lot of questions there. That's what we're digging into. But yeah, like you said, another day in Charlotte, another towing issue, and so that's what we're digging into.
TMPD said this is not the first time, so of course there are folks out there that can relate or probably have had that boot or whatever. Miles, when can, because it's an interesting story, and I'm sure a lot of folks are just going to wonder what happens next. When can folks catch your story?
5:30.
5:30. All right. Miles Harris here. Miles, thank you for stopping in studio. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Hi folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus taking over for Nick Sturdivant. We do want to get a check of our weather impacts. Of course, we're coming off a weekend with a bit of a cool down. Feels a little bit warmer today, but let's go ahead and see what we can expect for the rest of the week. Here's meteorologist Majestic Storm. All right, folks, sorry about that. We're having a little bit of an issue running that report, but be sure we'll keep you updated as we get more information on the forecast. Looks like we're good to go. Okay, here's Majestic Storm.
Well, good Monday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm. It was gorgeous over the weekend, a little cooler, but now that we're heading into our new work week, the big story is the warm up. We'll be back into the mid-70s today with gradually clearing skies, and then by tomorrow, just like that, we're back into the 80s. We'll have multiple days in a row where temperatures will reach at least 80 degrees, and it's not just going to be hotter, but you'll also notice a little humidity in the air by the middle half of our work week. Then by the end of the week, we're tracking scattered rain showers, even a few isolated thunderstorms with potentially some active weather heading into our Easter weekend. Let's start with this though. It is going to be absolutely beautiful as we're heading into our Monday afternoon. Temperatures feeling so comfortable, low to mid 70s across the place. I think most people like at least 70s, low to mid 70s is comfortable out there, not too hot and not too cold. You can see those winds will be a little bit breezy at times, moving in from the south and the west, gusting up to around 20 miles an hour. So ultimately, it's just helping to usher in warmer air, and that's why today will be much warmer than yesterday. Yesterday, we topped off at 66. Today, we're forecasting a high of 77. That's for us here in Charlotte, but let's take you up into the mountains. 63 in Banner Elk today, Blowing Rock, a gorgeous day with a high of 64. Morganton, sunny skies, 76 this afternoon, and 73 in Hickory. From Statesville to Gastonia, planned for mid-70s, even over there in Concord. And then just to the south of us, mainly those mid-70 degrees. Temperatures are feeling nice and, again, going to be very, very comfortable. Overnight lows tonight, not getting that cold. We will hold on to a little bit of cloud coverage, but ultimately tomorrow morning you'll be waking up and really no need to grab the heavy jacket as temperatures will be nearly 60 degrees heading out the door. And if we're starting out the day that early, you better believe tomorrow's going to be a warm one, setting the tone. 82 degrees on Tuesday. By Wednesday, we're back into the mid-80s, and really we stay into the 80s until Saturday. Easter Sunday, a high of 77 degrees, but we have this front that's pushing through that'll start to drop those temperatures next week, back into the mid to upper 60s, and really that's closer to where we should be for this time of the year compared to the next few days. So yes, eventually cooler air will settle our direction, but ultimately that same system will bring us some rain chances. Sunny at 75 degrees today, no rain today. Tomorrow, sunny and warm, and we're also dry. Wednesday will be our first opportunity for a few sprinkles here and there, but really Thursday we're drying things out again. It's not really until Friday that those scattered rain showers will be a little bit more prevalent, especially later on in the day, and then Sunday. Sunday's the day that it seems like that could be when we get the most amount of rain. Here's 6 o'clock at night on Friday, so some passing rain showers. Saturday, not bad, but then this is that cold front. As we head into our Sunday morning, we're dry early in the day, but it seems like that system could bring us some rain shower activity late in the day. We need the rain because all of North Carolina is still under that burn ban until further notice. Again, models are indicating about 1/4 of an inch for most of us, so not a ton, but again, we'll take any raindrops we can get. Here's a Jury Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. We're wrapping up March with warm conditions. We're back into the low 80s tomorrow, and then April 1st, that's on Wednesday, 85 degrees. That's near record warmth, and we'll be holding on to those 80s for several days in a row. Scattered rain showers late on Friday, but stay close to our weather team. We'll be keeping you up to date with those changes come Sunday.
All right, folks, and with that, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more on the other side. Hi, folks. Thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. We are turning now to a big talking point within the Charlotte community lately. That's the I-77 South Express lanes, the proposed expansion of toll routes. And this is really causing a lot of uproar in some communities that feel like they are going to be impacted very drastically. And they say negatively because of this expansion. Well, tonight there's actually a new community engagement center where folks can come and ask questions. The officials are saying this is all about being more transparent about the project. And so we wanted to take a look at exactly what this new center entails for engagement. We got officials who spoke on that just today, just a couple hours ago. Let's go ahead and listen into that press conference.
Good morning. My name is D'Alva Arnold with D. Wilson Agency. Our team has the honor of leading community engagement for the I-77 South Express Lanes project, working alongside the NCDOT project team to make sure that the people who live and work along the corridor have meaningful voice throughout the process. I am thrilled to have many of you in the room who are interested in the project and the space. That's exactly what the space is about. The Community Engagement Center is a place where you can provide feedback and get direct access, information to staff and to the people who know the project best. We're proud to be a part of making this happen. We will be hosting listening sessions and continuing with community engagement throughout the community, but also having community engagement events here at the center and community-focused programs. So the center serves the community as a multifaceted resource. That is the goal. I want to acknowledge our elected officials who are here and our community leaders in the room. If you live in the corridor, please raise your hand to be recognized. Thank you. Thank you for being here and for your leadership. We're also honored to have the chair of the NCDOT board here with us today, Mr. Tony Lathrop. Thank you for being here. Who's an advocate for our community and for transportation. And of course, we're honored to have our distinguished mayor here with us today, who has been a steadfast champion for Charlotte, and it's my privilege to welcome her to the podium now.
Thank you, D'Alva. I appreciate that. I'm not quite sure. It's a little bit early, everybody. I don't see anybody just like going whoop, whoop at all. So let me go ahead and begin with this. I'm actually honored to be able to be in this space in this time. We have worked with a number of people, but I want to say this, what we're doing today and the information, and thank you for showing up to make sure that all of the people have an understanding of what's going on. But before I start talking about this building or this project, I want to talk about something that's much more important. Many of you are here. I know I saw Ricky over here. Always good, always good, always doing the right things for our community. And I want to say he is an example of the families along this corridor. We have connections to Brooklyn, a neighborhood that was vibrant, rooted, and full of life. And we lost it, not by choice, but by decisions that did not value the lives of people that built here. I was not here. You know, sometimes I like to claim to be a Charlottean first and foremost, but I was not that person this time for this event. And I won't pretend to understand the loss that was done, but I do want to acknowledge it. We ought to be talking clearly and publicly about history that matters. Now, the one thing I'm really proud of is my mother-in-law, who was a person of nursing and has the person of where our football stadium is. Those women worked in communities and they made it better for all of us. Brooklyn helped shape this part of Charlotte, and the families who came from there helped build the strength of this community today. And that is why history must be followed. This project must be done differently, with transparency, with real engagement, and most of all, respect. Now, I know that there are going to be questions and concerns about this project. And to anyone who feels uncertain, I want to say this. You deserve the answers for your questions and for your opportunities. You know, I do want to say, you don't need to be a flyer. You don't need to be someplace that we are not recording. We're doing all of these things to make it possible. We want people to know that there are questions and concerns about this project, and I want to say that you will have answers, real conversations. That is exactly why the center exists today. If you have questions about your street, your neighborhood, or your property, you can schedule a one-on-one meeting with a project engineer or a right-of-way specialist, face-to-face. No waiting, no run around, just real people sitting at real tables and expressing what they want to see and happen. This is really, really an important time for our city. Projects like this don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in neighborhoods, near homes, businesses, schools, and churches. They affect real people. And that is why the center will remain active throughout the life of the project, hosting evenings, sharing updates, and creating space for ongoing conversation. Because engagement is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing commitment from this community and the people that are working to make this possible. The City of Charlotte will stay engaged. We will listen, and we will work to ensure this project serves all of our communities with care and respect. I want to thank Secretary Johnson at NCDOT as well as Tony Lathrop, who've been with us the entire time as we start thinking about how do we recreate what's important for everyone. I want to say that to the Charlotte City Council members as well. Most importantly, I want to say thank you for those of you who showed up today, for staying involved and helping us shape the future of this great city and this great community. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Del.
Thank you.
Diallo.
Thank you, Mayor Lowes, and thank you to all of you for being here. Whether you came because of an eager to learn more, because you are eager to learn more, because you have specific questions, or because you simply want to see the space for yourself, every one of you belongs here, and that's the whole point. This is a community center. The center is now open. Staff is here and are ready to talk with you. If you have a specific question about your neighborhood, your property, or the project in general, I encourage you to ask the questions, schedule one-on-one appointment with them, and a member of your team is happy to answer your questions. You'll see QR codes around the building in which you can use to schedule one-on-one appointments with them. And then also, you can walk in. You can walk in the space and also set up in-person appointments and virtual appointments for 30 minutes. So be sure to sign up and share with others in the neighborhood. An important note to leave with is that today NCDOT will release updated sketches of maps that show reduced impacts. These revised sketches will be online at 5 p.m. today, but they're available for you to preview on the screen. Please take a look, introduce yourself to the team, and come back often, as their resources here will continue to evolve. This community center is a little bit bare right now because we did rush to get it up in response to the community. By the end of the month, you'll see additional maps here, you'll see additional resources here that will be available for the center. But more importantly, there will be experts here for advisory on right-of-way, for relocation, small business events, and also classes to help the broader community, like Home Buying 101, financial literacy, and things that just help people in general. So please come back, take advantage, and we're very happy that you're here today. Thank you. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
All right, and folks, we do have a reporter working on this. Our Bria Smith will have more on this Community Engagement Center for the I-77 expansion proposal at 4 and at 5. So keep it here on WCNC Plus throughout the rest of the afternoon and evening. We'll see you in 2 minutes with more Live Impact News. Hi folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. Right now we do want to turn to a live look at Cape Canaveral where you can see the countdown is underway for the launch of NASA's Artemis 2 mission. So there it is, standing by. This launch is supposed to happen in the evening on Wednesday, just before 6:30. And we've got 4 astronauts who are slated to lift off from Kennedy Space Center there in Florida. They're going to go on a 10-day journey looping around the Earth and the Moon. And of note, these folks will be the first people to launch towards the Moon since Apollo 17. That was more than 50 years ago. Also notable, they're not set to land on the lunar surface. As we mentioned, they'll be just going around. But with that, we want to get to the latest briefing from just this weekend. We heard from the crew themselves about looking ahead to this momentous occasion.
You're looking live at Launch Pad 39B, where in just a few days, NASA's Artemis 2 crew will lift off to begin their journey around the moon. Good morning and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center for our Artemis 2 crew news conference. The crew is joining us virtually today from astronaut crew quarters and will begin taking questions shortly. But before we get started, I'll toss it over to the crew for some opening remarks. Reed, take us away.
Thanks, Courtney. It's great to hear your voice. Great to see the rocket on the television. I know we're here at the Kennedy Space Center, and every chance we can, we're going out to Pad 39B and just looking at that amazing vehicle that this incredible team has put together. I'll hand it over to Victor.
Good morning. It's great to see you virtually, and looking forward to answering all your questions.
Good morning, everyone. Things are certainly starting to feel real here at the Cape. Our families joined us yesterday, and we had a chance to be on the pre-test brief for the actual starting of the launch countdown. So we're excited to be a part of all that, and we're excited to share with you today.
It's a really cool feeling right now. We're just down the hall, our spacesuits. Since we got here, we've done a dress rehearsal, if you will, getting into the suits. And with the families arriving yesterday, pretty special to take them out to the pad, show them the rock in the daylight, and then again, all lit up in its spectacular beauty at night. So back to you, Courtney.
Thank you all. We'll go ahead and begin our Q&A portion of this news conference. Our first question comes from Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. Irene, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We have you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. My question is for Reed and Victor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think either one of you had an opportunity to do any manual flying on your Soyuz and Dragon flights, respectively. And I wanted to just ask a little bit about the Proxox demo that you're going to be doing. If you can describe in some detail who is going to be doing what part of that exercise and what you are expecting the manual control of Orion to be like. Thanks.
Well, I'll answer the first part of that with, on the Soyuz, we have to do a hand controller checkout and a thruster checkout when we first get to space, and the Russian commander always does that from the center seat. But in the left seat, I was right next to our translational hand controller by my right knee, and Max Sarayev looked over at me and winked. It was like, go ahead and just give it a tap. So I have flown a spaceship manually, and I can tell you it's pretty awesome. Victor, talk about our pod.
It's actually a really important evolution. You know, we have to make sure that the Artemis 3 and 4 missions have this capability, and so we are essentially going to make sure that the vehicle flies the way that we think it does, that we designed it to do. And so we're going to not only fly the vehicle manually, we're going to execute the 6 degrees of freedom, so translating forward, backwards, left, right, up, and down, and then also being able to rotate, pitch, yaw, roll, and pitch on roll. But we also want to give qualitative and quantitative feedback to the ground team, so letting them know what it feels like now that we can hear and feel the thrusters, and to just understand the human experience. And so one really interesting thing that's going to happen during the proximity operations demo, where we're going to start out probably beyond 100 meters and get all the way in as close as 10 meters at some point in the demo, is to give them feedback, so verbal feedback. And so we're actually going to switch seats. Reed is going to launch in seat 1, I'm going to launch in seat 2. but we're going to take our suits off, and then we're going to get back into each other's seats, and he's going to run the procedure while I fly the vehicle primarily, but I'm also going to put my communication system, actually his communication system, on voice activation so I can just talk to the ground continuously, and so the ground team can hear from the crew. It's really a crew experience to fly that vehicle, but to give them feedback on essentially, hey, this flies like the simulator, or this is how it's very different from the simulator, so that we can verify and validate the models for training the later crews.
I want to add one thing. I just want to add to the end of that is it is Victor in C1 and I will be in C2, but this is a crew activity through and through. And so Christina will be floating right to Ike's left, to Victor's left. She is really in charge of the timing discipline and the procedural discipline, maintaining the big picture to make sure we get through this safe. And if we have any off nominal, she is right there with all of our off nominal steps to get us back on track. And then Jeremy will be floating just to my right, and he is always watching the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. If anything goes wrong with that stage out the window or on the displays, he's ready to call it back away and get us back into a safe configuration. So it's all four of us at the controls for that evolution.
I have one more thing. And, grab the wrong mic. But I wanted to add that, of course, ProxOps is really exciting because we are practicing the rendezvous. We get within 10 meters of our upper stage rocket. It's amazing. But there will be another activity where we manually pilot the vehicle on one of our cruise days, so you can stay tuned for that as well.
Okay, our next question is from Bill Harwood with CBS News.
Hey guys, it's great to see you all again. Tech show speaker, it's great to see you again. My question is absolutely non-technical. You know, the other night I was picking up some takeout food from Tai Tai in Cape Canaveral, and it was a crystal clear night, and I was looking up at the moon, and I don't normally think this way. I don't like the moon. I'm an amateur astronomer. I like it out of the sky so I can see the dim stuff, but I kept thinking about you guys saying, I couldn't imagine actually going there. You know, I was trying to picture that in my mind as I was looking at the moon. So I hate to make this a long question, but I mean, could a couple of you just talk about it? You're bound to do the same thing, look up and have some thoughts. What are your thoughts as people who see the moon as a destination, not just a bright globe in the sky? Thanks.
So yesterday we spent some time with our geology team lead, Kelsey, just going over the plan, and depending on which launch day we launch in this window, you know, how that changes. But looking at some of the details that we're going to be examining and the things that they're interested in, specifically different colors or just different shades, variations in the albedo of the moon. They're very interested. We look at it from different angles and different lighting, and so we look at it with sort of under this microscope all the time, and then every once in a while I step back sort of like you did last night and just look at it, and I really feel like, gosh, that is really far away, and it just gives me great appreciation for it. And in the night sky, I've spent a lot more time looking at it through binoculars in my backyard, sharing that with my family. We've got the binoculars here, and hopefully we'll get some clear skies. They weren't last night, but for us, but hopefully we'll get some clear skies and some good viewing. But the other thing we've focused on quite a bit of as a crew is just listening to other people's perspectives on the moon and how different cultures look at the moon. And when we go back, honoring just how humanity, we all share this same moon in the sky, but honoring humans around the world and how they revere the moon. That's really important to us.
One thing.
Yeah.
Bill, one of the things you said right at the end of your question was, how do we feel as the people that can call the moon the destination, a destination, not just something we're looking at? And it is our strong hope that this mission is the start of an era where everyone, every person on Earth can look at the moon and think of it as also a destination.
Our next question is from Jonathan Seary with Fox News.
Thank you so much for taking the time to the entire crew. This question is for anyone who'd like to talk about space medicine. What excites you most about what you'll be able to study beyond low Earth orbit, and how will it inform future deep space missions?
I'll I'll start with, it's going to be a touch off topic, but the camera that Artemis 3 will take and Artemis 4 will take to the surface of the moon is going to be a Z9 by Nikon, and we fought pretty hard to get just that camera on board to see what is the radiation environment in deep space going to do to the sensors on that particular camera so that we can learn about that. We have science experiments on board that are going to be looking at our own cells in our body and also on little test kits, so we'll be able to compare that when we get back. We have radiation sensors in the vehicle that are going to be monitoring the radiation environment for the entire ride out and back. And then we also are going to go into, most likely if we launch on the 1st or 2nd, we'll go into an eclipse period, which will be very stressing for the power and thermal systems on our spacecraft. There's not really a scientific benefit there, but it's a huge payoff to our modeling and what we're going to look at for Artemis 3 and 4. I'll see if anyone else wants to talk some of the details.
Just wanted to add that, one of the things that the future Artemis missions are going to do is actually to work on the surface of the moon. And so we also have a fantastic team of exercise folks and operational psychologists that we're going to get to talk to. And even though this mission is not going to the surface, we are starting some of the processes that we think are going to help them be successful physically, emotionally, and mentally in getting ready for surface work.
Great.
Our next question is from Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, good morning all. Reed, I'd like to ask you to reflect a bit on your role as mission commander. I imagine you may have to make some final calls or tough calls during potentially challenging moments of this flight. Just talk about how you prepare for this job and that responsibility. Thank you so much.
I say it every time I get asked this question. I'm flying with Victor, Christine, and Jeremy. We have the best crew that you could put together from NASA and the Canadian Space Agency here. So we really have broken down the specifics of this mission across all 4 of us. There are times when I have responsibility. There is times when others have the direct responsibility. But at the end of the day, every ship needs a captain, and I'm ready to make those decisions. But I'm not making them in a vacuum. I can just watch my crewmates here. I know their facial expressions. They know mine. We know when we're tense. We know when an immediate decision needs to be made. But the biggest thing that we try to remind ourselves every single time we fly, we say, no fast hands in the cockpit. You do not want to do anything too quick in this vehicle. You need to take your time. You need to process everything. Almost always it pays bigger dividends to move forward than to go backwards. So no fast hands in the cockpit. We're going to go slow, and we have the ultimate trust in each other. And that's how we will get through this.
Our next question is from Ken Chang with the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. At the very top, Christina said it's beginning to feel real. For the first couple of sets of launch opportunities, you didn't even get down here. So I was wondering if you could sort of describe how you feel being quarantined at Kennedy, seeing a rocket on the launch pad, and the weather forecast looks good. It looks promising. Thank you.
It's great to be here. I think everyone in the crew office loves coming to Kennedy Space Center. It's kind of like, pilots love to be out at the airfield and see airplanes, and so a place where space missions start and some finish is a pretty special place. But it is also just neat to be here with this team that has really crushed it. The exploration ground systems, the folks that have gotten the vehicle ready and repaired the things that need fixing, and to watch them really maintain that schedule and to get that rocket into the VAB and back out to the pad. It's also good to be out here with them and to share some time with them. We spent a lot of time working with our team back in Houston, the flight control and engineering teams that have helped us analyze and proceduralize this mission. And so now it's cool to be out here with the team that's has been maintaining and preparing the rocket, and it's good to see it. And every day that we're here is the first time that we're doing this, and so we are exploring on this timeline as well, and it does feel good.
I want to add one thing. I want to.
All right, folks, before we get to the next question here, just a reminder, we've been listening into the crew of the Artemis 2 ahead of Wednesday's launch around the moon, and we will have more from this press conference in just a couple minutes. But we're going to take a quick break. Back in 2 with more. All right, folks, back here in the Live Impact News studio, we will turn back to all of the lead up to the big launch of the Artemis II on Wednesday. There's another live look over at Cape Canaveral. As we mentioned, this is going to be a launch just before 6:30 in the evening Wednesday, hopefully if everything goes to plan. And this will be bringing a crew of 4 towards the moon, a first launch towards the moon, in fact, in about 50 years. And our crew is going all out to get you prepared and also fully covered as this launch is happening. Wanted to let you know, if you are going to be looking for coverage, our Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich will be part of that, alongside Betsy Kling, who's the chief meteorologist at our sister station in Cleveland. So they will be guiding us along as this launch is happening. Hopefully, once again, it does go to plan there with that Wednesday evening takeoff. With that, we'll go back to the crew leading up to the big event, kind of answering some questions from reporters and talking about just how they're feeling in the days ahead of this launch.
Second, do we have an expectation that we are going? We will go when this vehicle tells us it's ready and when the team is ready to go. So we might go out to the pad and we might have to try again a few more times, and we are 100% ready for that.
Our next question is from Anthony Leone with Spectrum News.
Good morning. Thank you so much for taking our questions. There are so many firsts here for this mission. The first commander of a return manned mission to the moon, the first black man, the first woman, the first Canadian to visit the moon. What do these firsts mean to each of you?
It's a great question. It's one that we do think about it a lot. We always say that, you know, we are not doing this for the superlatives. We're doing this because it's a unique opportunity. We are going for all and by all. This is what NASA embodies. This is what the space program around the world embodies, and we are proud to be a part of that journey. I think what's neat to me about that question is each one of the 4 of us, we carry a whole lifetime of experiences and perspectives. And when you get us together and we're in a geology class looking at the moon, you really start to see those all come out. Like the way I was raised as a child is different than the way they were raised, the different influences on our lives, different mentors, different heroes, different interests. And all those differences start to come out in the way we view the science objectives of the mission, and they come out in the way we view the technical hardware. So honestly, for me, it's just an honor to get to watch the way everybody brings their unique perspectives.
It is a big question, and I want to highlight, I guess, maybe one facet of this is the tension, I call it. I live in this, this dichotomy between happiness that a young woman can look at Christina and just physicalize her passion or her interest, or even if it's not something she wants to do, she can just be like girl power, and that's awesome. And that young brown boys and girls can look at me and go, hey, he looks like me and he's doing what? And that's great. I love that. But I also hope we are pushing the other direction, that one day we don't have to talk about these first, that one day this is just, and I listen to this, that this is the human history. It's about human history. It's the story of humanity, not black history, not women's history, but that it becomes human history.
Everything I've heard from my crewmates really resonates. Thank you guys for those amazing words. Something to add is that although it is something to celebrate, a bunch of firsts, that's definitely not necessarily telling the whole story, and it's also not about celebrating any one individual. If there is something to celebrate, it's that we are at a time when everyone who has a dream gets to work equally hard to achieve that dream. And we're at a time where we've recognized the importance of, if we are not going for all and by all, we aren't truly answering all of humanity's call to explore. That, to me, is what's worth celebrating.
There's so much here, and all of that really resonates deeply with me. Something maybe slightly different from my perspective is what you're seeing here is, yes, a Canadian is going to go into deep space. And that's an extraordinary thing because of the American space leadership that curated that. But I hope others outside of Canada feel part of this too, because this is just an acknowledgement of anybody who shows up and is able to contribute something meaningful to to our future endeavors can be part of this mission. And so I hope the Commonwealth feels or sees himself in this mission. I hope all the international partnerships see themselves flying on this mission, because they truly are. And it's just been an extraordinary journey for me. It's kind of broadened my perspectives as an astronaut too. I'm wearing a Canadian patch here that was designed by an Anishinaabe artist in Canada, and it just represents some of the beauty of Indigenous culture and their perspective on the moon and the 7 sacred laws, and just the richness of doing something together and how inviting that is. It's shocking to me, but pleasantly surprising how many people show up and are going on the mission with us. It's not just 3 Americans and a Canadian. It is people literally around the world, and it's a beautiful thing. And we're going to go do something very real, very challenging, and that's what will make it inspiring.
Our next question is from Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now.
Hello all, it's good to see you again. Going back to the point about preparation versus expectation, you know, the TLI burn is really the big moment that sets you on the course towards the moon. But Christina, you mentioned that there may be the possibility for U-turn, return after that point. So I wonder, can you talk about what is truly the point of no return once you're heading towards the moon? When is the last moment that you can say, if there is an issue, we're going to, swing it on back to Earth, and what that actually entails? Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We do live in a world of preparation without expectation. We're ready to go. We're also ready to stay. And yes, that includes all the way even past TLI. There's a saying in the astronaut office that you can't say you're going to space until after MECO, main engine cutoff. For us, you can't say you're going to the moon until basically the mission's over. Well, there is actually a technical answer to your question, and it involves our spacesuits, because our suits are not only suits, they are survival systems. They have been designed to keep us alive in the case of a cabin leak for up to 144 hours, 6 days. And what that means is the entire mission, including our abort options, have also been designed around that 6-day mark. So as long as we can get back in 6 days, we can take an abort option, we could continue around the moon. So that's really, I think, the more technical answer to your question.
Our next question comes from Charlotte Cosett with AFP.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time to answer questions. My question was about the final hours before launch. I wanted to know, how will you spend those hours before launch and the day itself? Do you have any personal or team rituals to help you stay focused or relaxed?
It is actually a very long day. We wake up about 8 hours before launch, and there's a pretty tight schedule of things to get out there, some of which you're going to see when we walk out of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Facility crew quarters and come out of that elevator that you've seen crews come out of for years. That's amazing to be here and to get to do that. But that day, it's because that schedule is so tight, there is not a lot of time for like personal rituals, I would say, but before I fly an airplane, I generally say a very short prayer, and then I try to send my family a note to tell them that I love them. And so one of the neat things about this is a tradition we started is our families are outside the building when we walk out, and so that is the moment that I'm going to get to tell them I love them instead of sending a text message or a phone call. I get to tell them I love them, and then I'll still say my prayer before we all get into the vehicle, and then that way I can focus on that timeline and making sure that the launch control team is not waiting on us, the crew.
Our next question comes from Christopher Mick with Hudson Star Observer.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the question, and best of luck to all of you on this upcoming mission. I wanted to ask a little bit on a procedure during your training you've encountered that's been the most difficult to kind of simulate on your Earth-based simulators that you're kind of looking forward to or hoping to get some data back that'll be helpful on orbit or in space, to yourself and the future Artemis crews.
I think Christina will take the second half of this. One thing that we really have realized, I love this question. It actually got us thinking. But one thing that we have noticed is that as we go through all, this is a first flight. And not every procedure, to the best of our verification method, it's sound, it's 100% ready to go. We should be able to run that procedure without any misgivings. But we have found that this is a first flight, and basically every time we send a command to this vehicle, we take ownership of this vehicle, we have to think about what we are doing right now. So as we're running through these procedures, we have to be thinking at all times, every single step, what are we doing, what are we asking of the vehicle, and what is it telling us in response? And then we also have had to build a tremendous amount of communication and trust with our mission control team in Houston. 3 of us have flown on the International Space Station. We have operated with mission control for months, if not years of our lives. We know how this process works. But this mission in a small, highly dynamic spacecraft, it is different. And working through that process of how we're making decisions to move forward in this flight has been a really neat thing. And there's been give and take. There's been things that our flight directors, Jeff Radigan, Judd, and Rick, have given to us, and there have been things that we have given to them. And as we have built out this entire team, it just feels really good. We all know each other, and we're all ready to take on this challenge.
I'll throw out a couple salient examples of moments. I think the first that comes to mind is rendezvous and proximity operations, our test for that, our pod, we call it. And we've talked a lot about that, won't go into detail, but all of our simulators, we have ones that have very high fidelity volumetrically, we have ones that have very high fidelity flight software-wise, we have ones that have very high fidelity views out the window. We don't have a motion simulator, and I don't think even if we did, we could really know how the vehicle will respond. So that's when we got to test in space. Another that comes to mind is the flyby, looking at the moon. What will it actually look like through our eyes, through the windows of Orion? That is something we're all really looking forward to. And some of the other big ones are our life support systems. We will be venting the carbon dioxide that's removed from our breathing atmosphere inside the vehicle the entire mission. That was not done on Artemis 1, and it does have some effects on our navigation and guidance, so we'll have to get to space to really see how that affects the vehicle. And if I'm going to say a fourth, I'm going to go with the exercise device, because it is a very small spacecraft and not all of us are very small. And when one person exercises in there, it will be very interesting to see how that affects the rest of the spacecraft, what we can do while that's going on. Does it keep our solar arrays safe enough with all that dynamic motion? There's a lot to learn there, and so many things are new. Those are kind of the big ones that none of our simulators can adequately address on the ground.
Can I add one? Just one real quick thing too. Just we have a fantastic training team that has helped us to get to this point, but also I want to just put a plug in for training systems like simulators. One thing, it's not a procedure, but across all of the training, the ability to stop and restart a simulator or run it fast to get to a certain point, that has been something that has been a challenge and something I think we're going to have to really push on and do better in the future missions.
Good.
Our next question comes from Jackie Waddles with CNN.
Hi, folks. Thanks for doing this. Good to talk to you again. Quick question for Victor, a kind of follow-up on Irene's question. I understand, like, during these prox ops, you'll be evaluating the craft on the Cooper-Harper rating scale. I'd love if you can tell us a little bit about what that is, and if you have an idea going into this of how you'll be rating the vehicle, or if you're expected to be surprised. And then, since you'll all be involved in prox ops, I also wanted to ask, I think I understand this correctly, that there won't be rangefinders, so you'll be doing some kind of analog calculations here. I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you guys are going to coordinate on that and what you're expecting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Christina reminded me we don't have a whole lot of time because I love talking about this. So we will be using the modified Cooper-Harper scale. Cooper and Harper wrote this report about how to evaluate aircraft, and it's a great report. It's actually not super long, so you may want to reference that to get some of the points out. But you get a number out of it. It's a scale that starts with is the situation controllable, and then you go through, is it adequate, it's suitable. Do you get just the minimum performance, or do you get the desired performance? And it's essentially a scale. The lower the number, 1 is better, and 9 is not good, not controllable. And the pilot comments, the things that the people say, are the other data. So you get a number and then the comments from the crew. And And that's why I think it's really important, even though I'll be a hot mic, I think all four of us making comments about what we see, hear, feel, because it's an integrated system, is going to be one very important part. And you touched on something that's very important and I think is a huge statement of trust from the agency to this crew is we will not have a range finder. There's no data that tells us the R, the range between us and ICPS. We will be using subtended angles, how big the upper stage looks out the window or through a camera. And so we are the primary hazard avoidance system, these eyes and our assessment of how close we are. And we've been training for that for years. Actually, before we started official training, we were doing human-in-the-loop tests for this demo, and so we've been able to get lots of practice doing that.
Sometimes the simplest stuff is the best.
Our next question is from Joey Roulette with Reuters.
Hey, thanks guys for doing this. Victor, I'm really fascinated by that description you just gave right there, and I had a quick follow-up. Like, can you just explain why it's so important for crews to get into manual controls for these types of spacecraft, kind of in an age where everything's automated these days? And then for the whole crew, real quick, I just had a broader question that you guys have probably been asked a billion times, but why is the U.S. going back to the moon, and why, as folks in D.C. will say, why is it important for the U.S. to get there first before other countries? Thanks.
Yes, I'll take the easy flying question and then pass it on to my awesome crewmates. So, I'll put it in terms of, something we're seeing around the metroplexes around the country, these automated taxis and self-driving vehicle services. You see, before they're allowed to operate autonomously, they have a driver sitting in the front seat. And sometimes they're just a safety observer. They're there to make sure that the thing doesn't go off the rails or, take the construction and just decide that it's going to divide by zero and plow through the intersection or something, or that it can actually distinguish red and green and stop when it's supposed to stop and go when it's supposed to go. It's kind of like that. We want the automated systems to work, but we also want a crew to be able to jump in into, you're not always going to manually dock, but you may need to manually stop a docking that is not.
All right, folks, we will continue with this press conference from the Artemis II crew ahead of their Wednesday launch in just a couple minutes. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more Live Impact News. Hey folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We've been listening into yesterday's briefing from the Artemis II crew ahead of their Wednesday launch. They've been taking questions from reporters, looking ahead to the big moment. As we told you before, this will be the first time that a crew has gone towards the moon in about 50 years. And yes, they are going towards the moon. They're not intended to land on the moon, but they will be going around. And let's go ahead and pick up where we left off with this question and answer session.
ready, and it can control the vehicle the way we expect it to, so that we can be comfortable letting an automated docking happen on the future more complex missions. And that if something does go wrong, I mean, if you study software statistics, you'll see that automation is not always the answer. It is fallible, just like humans are, in different ways. And so we need to be able to interrupt. Even if we don't do the operation by hand, we need to be able to stop it safely, and that's one of the things that we're testing, is that we can back away from the upper stage in the way that we predicted.
Nice.
I can get started, but I think we should answer a little bit. The question about the why of this mission, there are so many different ways that you can answer that. There's the industrial benefits, there's the commercial benefits, scientific, technology, innovation, inspiration, and I hope that we talk a little bit about those as a crew. I'll also just mention that high level, really the question is not should we go, but should we lead or should we follow? That's how I see it, because everyone, many countries have recognized the value that there is in exploring further into the solar system, to the moon and onto Mars. They've recognized that not only can we gain all these extremely tangible benefits, but that we have the opportunity to answer the question that could be the question of our lifetime, which is, are we alone? When we go out and meet people, people ask that all the time. Have you seen evidence of this? What can we learn? And the fact is that answering that question starts at the moon. The moon is a witness plate to our entire solar system's formation. It's a stepping stone to Mars, where we might have the most likelihood of finding evidence of past life. But it's also a Rosetta Stone for how other solar systems form. All the billions of other solar systems in our galaxy, where we've seen from some of our other telescopes like Kepler that there are planets orbiting other suns. All of this starts to unlock when you go to the moon, and for me, that's one of the most important scientific reasons to go.
And we don't have to answer, right? Christina, that was amazing. I guess I'll just add the only thing that kept coming to my mind there, and let me see if I can relate it back. Maybe this will be a swing and a miss, but we just ate breakfast together. We were laughing most of the time. I was actually crying, and one of the jokes is just so funny. But I brought a little map of Antarctica to breakfast this morning, and I just put it out on the table, and one of us has been there. One of us has wintered over at the South Pole. Christina has. And I've never been to Antarctica. And just sitting there at breakfast for just 5 minutes, listening to her talk about her experiences when she stands at the South Pole of planet Earth. It's just white all the way around. As far as it's just white, perfectly white, because there's no mountain to block your view. There's just white that reaches out to the horizon. And then she was talking about how she would go down to McMurdo Station for resupply ships and setting up science experiments. And all of a sudden, I was imagining being there. I was imagining seeing what she was seeing. I was imagining feeling the cold, feeling the sun, seeing all the different views that she was seeing. And the only reason all that was unlocked is because I was talking to someone who had been there. And I think at the end of the day, we have got humanity's call is to go explore and to go do these things and then to share them with the world and to motivate. We might motivate 10 kids to go do something great. We might motivate 1 kid to go do something great. And that's a success to me. Thanks.
Our next question is from Ryan Catton with NASAspaceflight.com.
Hey everyone, thanks for your time. I know it's busy as we get to the pointy end of the count here, but I'm really interested to see if any of you have any, talking to the geology earlier on, if any of you have any specific features of the moon which you're most excited or most technically interested to spot out of the windows. Is there anything you're especially looking out for, or is it just, the entire moon? I suppose it is the entire moon, but, thanks.
You're up. I'll start if anyone wants to add. There's what's interesting about this launch window is depending on which day we launch, it really changes what we're going to see on the far side of the moon. In the early parts of this window, we're going to see an eclipse. So we'll see the sun go behind the moon. And this is something new that we just started learning about last week. How the scientists are amazing. The plan changes and they're like, okay, we thought we were going to go do this, but maybe we can do something else. And right away they came up with some instruction for us on how we can leverage leverage this opportunity to look for things that they're interested on the moon, like lofting of dust is something that was observed by a couple of astronauts during Apollo, but there's no real documentation of it. And so this transport of lunar regolith around the moon is very interesting. Does it have to do with magnetic fields, or what is causing this? And so this provides an interesting opportunity to look at that, and also to look at the corona of the sun in a different way. And so we have been brushing up on how we're going to leverage this opportunity. There's a very short window, so that's pretty neat. As we come around the far side of the moon, no matter when we launch in this period, we will see part of the far side of the moon. And so Oriental is just this huge crater on the far side of the moon. I just learned last week, I didn't know this, you can see the edge of it from Earth. When the moon kind of rotates around a little bit in its orbit, it's tidally locked to the Earth, but you do see different sides of the moon a little bit more at certain times of the year. And so with telescopes, you can see the edge of this crater, but no one has ever seen this full crater on the far side of the moon. And so this would be really neat. I'm kind of excited to have a look at it. It's just enormous, super complex, and you could stare at it probably for hours.
You know, there's a report that one of the astronauts that went to the moon in the Apollo program wrote, Jack Schmidt, that he said about 3,000 miles is where you start to pick up the color, and then as you leave and go back beyond 3,000 miles, you start to lose the color. And so the scientists really are excited about getting these, 4 sets of human eyes, the best cameras in the universe, close to the moon. And so not any one specific thing, but just to be able to observe the moon and cosmic phenomena with human eyes up close, and to see things like the lunar regolith. We think of it as monochrome, or black and white or gray, and there's olivine, which is green, and pyroxene, which is gray or brown. And so we can get close to see some of those minerals in the regolith up there that add color, and that is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, is being closer and seeing some of that detail.
I think the only thing I want to add very briefly is we think, I know I did when we started training for this mission, that we've been to the moon. Apollo was at the moon. They've seen the whole far side of the moon. But actually, it turns out there's about 60% of the far side, I think, that has never been seen by human eyes because of the lighting conditions. Apollo always wanted that light on the front side of the moon for their landing and launch capabilities. So as Jeremy said, when we see Oriental, the human eyes have never seen that. Never seen that. We've seen it in satellite photos, but humans have never, ever seen that before. That's cool.
Our next question is from TJ Mascaro with the Epoch Times.
Good morning. Thank you so much for taking the time. Going back to preparations and expectations, the International Space Station has its entire life been about preparing humanity to go back to the moon and onto Mars and beyond. But it was always someday. Now it seems that someday is finally going to come. And so I was just wondering if you guys have felt any greater sense of immediate correlation between the work you did on station and now, and specifically if you could say any specific example of what you did during your missions on the space station that has come up and that you've kind of referenced during your training. And Jeremy, I know you haven't been there yourself, but maybe if there's anything that you witnessed while you were Capcom.
I kind of tuned out because I thought I wasn't going to have to answer this one, so maybe I'll go last. We see the signs. As soon as you highlighted the International Space Station, I hope we all smiled. You see the signs of it everywhere. That is the platform that we have lived and worked on, and that is really our training base for the last several decades, 25 plus years, to get us venturing deeper into space, and now the time has come. I want to highlight, just in the last few weeks, the administrator has announced plans for a moon base and has kind of reshuffled a little bit the Artemis architecture, and what that did is that fired us up. That gave us a lot of hope. We just changed our schedule last week to meet with our training team and the astronaut office to go through all the things that we want to feed forward into Artemis 3, training nuances, because all of a sudden the tempo has picked up and we are fired up. We're ready to go. We're ready to help that team. Our motto from day one has been help Artemis 3
succeed, and really we're getting ready to see that. The toilet on board Orion is on the International Space Station. A lot of our suit parts have been tested on the International Space Station. Our CO2 scrubbing, the amine swing beds have all been tested on the International Space Station. So that system has been a great test bed for us moving forward, and all of us have had our hands on those. We have Capcommed. All of us are capsule communicators communicating with the crew on the International Space Station. And I was actually texting Jessica Meir this morning. She wrote back. She's really excited to talk to us on the loop. She's up on the International Space Station right now. So I feel like sometimes we think of the space station as really far away, and it is kind of unique that for us we feel like the space station is just our friends up there, and it's a place that we've lived and worked, and it does not feel that far away for us. So it's really cool to highlight the great work of the International Space Station.
Okay, our next question is from Alexis Arango with WTMO.
Hi, question. What excites you most about NASA's visions for the sustained presence on the moon, and how does it feel to know that you are helping lay the foundation for everything that comes next?
I feel like I'm talking too much. There's one of my favorite inscriptions in the U.S. Capitol is inscribed in some wood in one of the subcommittee rooms, and it says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." And I think about that all the time. And sometimes you need solid technical foundations. You need companies like Blue Origin, SpaceX. You need Lockheed, Boeing. All these companies are out there right now doing amazing things, and we have a lot of smaller companies that are successfully landing on the surface of the moon, and that is all going to pick up. At the end of the day, it takes courageous leadership to go and set a vision, a bold vision. Kennedy did it in the 60s, and we reaped huge rewards, and we feel like we're at the cusp of this happening again on an international stage. And so I think, to me, that's the thing. That's the thing that feels right now, is there is a vision, and it is a workable vision. We have the budget, we have the capability, and right now, for the first time in human history, we have a diverse industrial base around this world that can actually enact and enable this mission and turn these dreams into reality.
I'll add something too that really resonates with me, and that is, when you have a program, you have to be willing to adapt when you learn new things. And so it's when you make a change, it's not that something before was wrong or that we failed. It's just like in your own life. You have to be willing to learn and adapt and then take what you have in that moment. And so I feel like often people interpret the change as something was broken or it's failed. No, I mean, we've been training the system, all these companies that have been working on this, they've learned so much. It's like an apprenticeship program, and we've learned a few things, and now we're going to adapt and we're going to move forward. And all around the world, everyone who's part of this program has the opportunity to adapt and lean into it and just do the very best we can, which is super exciting. This is the stuff that fires us up, is to imagine like being in that era of the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. When you look at the timelines of what they did, man, that's what we're capable of. And we're at a period right now where we can just lean into that and go after it. That's super powerful. And we're happy to do our small part, our small drop in the bucket, and then hand the baton on when we get back.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I'm very excited about the vision. All the things that you've heard, I 100% sign on to that. And I just want to say that I'm most excited about the leadership that is carrying that vision and sharing that vision. You know, our leader, Jared, Amit, we've got fantastic leadership at our center, Vanessa, the team that is making that vision a reality, all the way down to our flight operations team in Houston and the trainers. The people that are making that vision a reality are also equally inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And our final question today is from Brandy Campbell.
All right, and before we get to that final question, folks, we will take a break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back in 2 minutes to wrap up this news conference with the crew of the Artemis II. Hey folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. We were going to return and wrap up the Artemis II press conference with the crew, but as we speak, we've got a brand new feed coming live into our Live Impact News studio. This is coming to us from Michigan as the FBI tonight is releasing new information on the investigation into that Michigan synagogue attack from earlier this month. This is the one in West Bloomfield. Let's listen in right now.
Runyon, and I'm the special agent in charge of FBI Detroit Field Office. Our hearts continue to be with the community as they heal from this attack, especially the Temple Israel security team, its staff, teachers, and family. The FBI continues to support these victims through our online virtual victim assistance center, which can be found at www.fbi.gov/West Bloomfield Victims, plural. This website provides a host of resources still available to anyone who has been impacted by this attack. The purpose of today's press conference is to provide the investigative findings as well as a timeline into the motive of this attack against the Jewish community at Temple Israel on March 12th. From the outset, this has been a full-scale investigation with our special agents, intelligence analysts, linguists, digital forensic examiners, evidence response team members, our professional staff, and our special agent bomb techs to work around the clock in close coordination with our law enforcement partners. Despite the fire in the truck and the assailant's attempts to delete his digital footprint, we have processed hundreds of digital and forensic evidence items. We've conducted over 100 interviews of witnesses, family, and associates. We also continue to work with our foreign partners to receive any information that would shed light on the activities of the assailant or any threats currently here in Michigan. Based on the evidence gathered to date, we assess this attack to be a Hezbollah-inspired act of terrorism purposely targeting the Jewish community and the largest Jewish temple in Michigan. The FBI defines terrorism as a violent criminal act by an individual who is inspired by or associated with a designated foreign terrorist organization. We do not make this characterization lightly without a thorough review and keen evaluation of the facts. In this case, the evidence shows the attacker was motivated and inspired by Hezbollah's militant ideology. Although the assailant's attack planning and mobilization to violence began in earnest on March 9th, which I will fully detail here shortly, a review of his online activity since January 2026 revealed a reoccurring search history of pro-Hezbollah news channels, Iranian news channels, and videos about shootouts and bullets. He regularly consumed breaking news and statements and live coverage of the current Secretary General of Hezbollah, Naim Qassem, and viewed news coverage about an Iranian fatwa for total jihad against the U.S. military. Beginning on March 9th, during the early mornings, the assailant started viewing web pages of local synagogues, and in the afternoon, he attempted to purchase a weapon from 2 different individuals, both of whom we've identified and interviewed. After those people denied his request, he then purchased an AR-style rifle at a local gun store in Dearborn Heights, along with 10 rifle magazines and approximately 300 rounds of .223 rifle ammunition. While he was at the gun store, he ordered a rifle magazine pouch as well as 40 5.3-gallon water containers from an online store. After that gun store, he then began researching locations for local fireworks vendors. Throughout the night of March 9th, the assailant began visiting numerous different web pages of Jewish cultural, educational, and religious centers all throughout the Detroit metro area, and even viewed multiple pages of upcoming events at Temple Israel. During the morning and early morning of March 10th, he continued his online searches with specific search terms and phrases such as the largest gathering of Israelis in Michigan, Orthodox synagogues, Israelis near me, what time is the Trump rally in Michigan, as well as a center affiliated with the Israeli embassy in Michigan. He later attempted to try and delete these queries, but we were able to recover them. At approximately 1 p.m. on March 10th, the assailant visited a local shooting range and practiced shooting his new weapon. He then drove to the local fireworks vendor that he researched at approximately 2 p.m. and purchased over $2,200 of fireworks. After leaving that local fireworks vendor, he continued reviewing web pages related to Temple Israel, its clergy, and its upcoming events. On March 11th, the day before the attack, in the early morning, he began adding photos to a Facebook photo album that he entitled Vengeance. And he started including images such as the late Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini, as well as the late Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. With there on the right, in Arabic, it says, "Burn their world, for we have a vendetta against them that we will never forget." Throughout that morning on the 11th, he continued to post photos of his deceased brothers, niece, and nephew, and exchanged some messages with his family. However, at approximately 2:22 p.m., the delivery of his 45.3-gallon collapsible water containers arrived, and from 2:45 onward, we see him begin planning and organizing his truck, and he goes to get gas 4 different times so that he can fill up his containers without alerting too much suspicion. By 10:50 p.m., he makes his final run to a gas station and purchases 2 torch lighters, which we believe he used to light his truck on fire. Throughout the same afternoon, while he's organizing his truck and going to gas stations, the assailant continued reviewing web pages for Temple Israel and its upcoming events. And by 6:30, he continued posting pro-Hezbollah propaganda, as well as videos of his brother, and watching a video about how Israel is the most violent country in the world. Next slide. This is just an example of some of the posts that he was posting during the afternoon of the 11th. On the left is a statement issued by the Islamic Resistance of Hezbollah about the beginning of a military operation on March 11th called El-As El-Makul, which is a term used in the Quran where it refers to the destruction of the enemy and turning the enemy into withered, dead leaves. In the bottom left of that photo on the left, you can see 2 logos. One is for the military media of the Islamic Resistance, and the second logo is for Lebanese Hezbollah. On the right is a meme with the actual verse from the Quran in the Al-Fil chapter where it describes destroying the enemy and turning them into dead and withered leaves. At approximately 9:40 p.m., before he went to his last round of gas, he did one final search for what time is lunch at Temple Israel, and later deleted that query as well. On the morning of the attack, early in the morning hours, he posted numerous photos to Facebook of his deceased family members, as well as the following comments. Can you go back one? Right there. In the early morning hours, he continued posting on random and various Facebook profiles that said, "We will seek retribution for their sacred blood." Simu, which was a phrase for his brother, "Heaven is fortunate to have you." Israel is a cancerous, malignant growth. Israel is pure evil. And the oppressors will soon know what kind of end they will meet. By 6:56, he searched again online for additional rifle accessories. And by 7:20, he made a Facebook status post that said, "You killed the Ali and Hussein of our time. We will avenge their blood." He also posted additional comments to various Facebook threads and added additional photos to his Vengeance profile photo album in Facebook. From 8:45 to 9:52 that morning, before he left, the assailant visited the web pages again of a local firearms vendor, sporting goods store, and searched for a double magazine holster. But at approximately 9:18 a.m., the assailant departed for Temple Israel and arrived, as we all know, at approximately 9:58 a.m. At 10:01, he sends his sister a picture of a receipt that says $2,000 to Dad. And by 10:12, as he's sitting in the parking lot, he posts 4 videos, which were taken as he was driving to Temple Israel that morning. In the background of these videos, which I'm just providing screenshots of, are Arabic anthems playing in the background that have the themes of resistance and military defiance and impending dawn. By 10:13, right after those 4 videos were posted, he posts this photo to his Vengeance photo album, that there's no need to learn Hebrew anymore. Next slide. And by 10:34 onward, this is where we see a significant amount of his ideology come forward. While he's sitting in the parking lot, he sends his sister overseas 19 videos, photos, and messages that reiterated his intent to commit a mass terrorist attack, as well as affirming his Hezbollah-inspired ideology. These communications included statements expressing a commitment to commit violent action, references to martyrdom, as well as threats to attack what he described as the largest gathering of Israelis in Michigan. I'm going to provide a few of the screenshots. I'm not providing comprehensively everything that we have during this time. First, here is a meme that he sent, the first one he sent to his sister. The translation is, "Jihad is the gateway to heaven, one that God opens to his chosen ones." Next slide. Next photo he sends her in order is a photo with the verse from the Quran overlaid there in yellow. "For such he has written faith in their hearts and strengthened them with a spirit from himself. And he will admit them to the gardens beneath which rivers flow to dwell therein. God will be well pleased with them, and they with him. They are the party of God. Truly it is the party of God that will achieve felicity." His sister asks him to stop sending these photos, but he continues with a numerous set of videos, and I have a few screenshots. This first video and the screenshot is him sitting in the car with the same upbeat anthem from earlier, and it's called "This People Sends You a Call." And the chant in the background, while he's holding the gun, praises the south of Lebanon, the Hezb, the fighters, and those who die for the cause. He displays his weapon at the end of the video and says, "We rely on God." In a second video with the same screenshot, he continues with a chant in the background that encourages one to bomb the enemies and bring death upon them. It also encourages listeners to invade and attack enemy fortresses. The next video screenshot, the next video he sends, is him listening to Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qasem talking, and the Secretary General is saying that the listeners have one of two choices: victory or martyrdom. Qasem praises the Mujahideen in the field for giving the rest of them courage and determination, and the Arabic writing at the top in yellow says, "I remain committed." The bottom video screenshot is a video of him with the upbeat battle song in the background. The song mentions it's time for slaughter and bloodshed, and there's no time to draw back. While he's listening and recording himself driving, he yells, "Allahu Akbar," and then interrupts to declare his total devotion to God, saying that he is answering the call to heaven. Next slide. This photo, which I believe is out in the public, is a text up on the upper part. It's a verse from the Quran that it says, "The believers who are true to what they promised God, some have died for the cause and some are still waiting, but will never change." The bottom caption has the reference from earlier where it says, "Burn or ignite their world, for we have a vengeance or a vendetta that we will never forget." The last meme that I'll show you is a screenshot that he was taking and sent to his sister in the parking lot as well, where he covers up the Israeli flag with the yellow cover paint there and puts the phrase "Party of God" or Hezbollah over the Israeli flag. And yellow is a color often and always used and represent Hezbollah's sense of loyalty and sacrifice. Finally, and most concerning, is approximately 10 minutes before the attack, he sends his sister 2 final videos. In Arabic, he records himself saying with this screenshot, "This is the largest gathering of Israelis in the state of Michigan, in the United States. I have booby-trapped the car. I will forcibly enter and start shooting them. God willing, I will kill as many of them as I possibly can." He sends a quick 3-second video with the same screenshot shortly after and types the message, "A special operation." In between these videos and photos, the assailant exchanged 5 short phone calls with his ex-wife, who called Dearborn Heights, the police department, requesting that they do a welfare check on her ex-husband. And at 12:19, as we all know, the assailant drove his vehicle ramming into the doors of door 5, and he hit it twice. Tried once to hit it, had to reposition his truck, and then came in at a high rate of speed, going about 200 feet down the hallway. Between 12:20 and 12:22, the assailant and typical Israel security guards exchanged gunfire before we see that the assailant appears to set off the fireworks from the interior of his vehicle at approximately 12:22. By 12:30, the vehicle is on fire and the hallway is full of smoke. We are very grateful that aside from the assailant, there were no additional fatalities. However, this evidence makes very clear the attacker intended to cause significant amounts of harm to the members and the children present at Temple Israel that day. At this stage of the investigation, we've continued to find no evidence of co-conspirators, nor do we have information that indicates a current and active threat to the community at this time. I also want to address a few points that have drawn some public attention. Despite what has been in the reporting in the media, at the time of this incident, the assailant was not the subject of or referenced in any prior FBI investigation, nor was he on the terrorist watch list. There was no evidence that he previously visited or conducted pre-physical surveillance or pre-attack surveillance at Temple Israel prior to the attack. There were no additional improvised explosive devices besides the fireworks that we have described in the vehicle other than what we've already put out. And based upon the size of the water containers, we now assess that the subject used approximately 35 gallons of gasoline, not just the 20 to 30 that I had previously stated, in attempts to enhance his fireworks to set off the vehicle. Finally, I want to extend a deep thanks to my federal, state, and local partners, as well as the Jewish community organizations that have worked with us throughout this response. Their partnership has been and continues to be essential to our investigative efforts, as well as our shared mission to keep the Jewish community safe from any future threats. Thank you. And I'll now turn it over to the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan, Jerome Gorgon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As Special Agent in Charge Runyon just told you, my name is Jerome Gorgon. I'm the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. As the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer in this district, it is my job to make final charging decisions for federal crimes like this one. Before I do that, I want to thank SAC Runyon and the FBI for their tireless work on this investigation and their exceptional support of the victims. I also thank our other law enforcement partners for their valuable contributions and leadership. I have seen troubling statements made about this terrorist attack. To be fair, those imprudent claims were made without the benefit of seeing this evidence. But now there is no excuse. After reviewing the evidence that the FBI presented just at this press conference, and had this man lived, I am convinced that my office would prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed the federal crime of providing material support to Hezbollah, a designated foreign terrorist organization. Under federal law, terrorism includes premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetrated against non-combatant targets, like the American children he targeted at this Jewish temple. To prove this terrorism crime, there are three parts or elements. First, that this man knew that Hezbollah was a terrorist organization. Second, that he provided material support to Hezbollah. And third, that he did it under Hezbollah's direction and control. First, there should be no confusion. We are in America. We are under and we are protected by American law. And under American law, the U.S. State Department, with President Bill Clinton, designated Hezbollah as a foreign terrorist organization back in 1997. This formal designation followed Hezbollah's 1983 terrorist attack on the U.S. Marine compound in Beirut, Lebanon, where a terrorist killed 241 American service members. So Hezbollah has been a notorious anti-American terrorist organization for decades. Remember, that the terrorist from Hezbollah in 1983 drove a truck loaded with explosives into a building to kill Americans. That is exactly what this terrorist did a few weeks ago in our backyard. He methodically planned, armed himself, and then drove an explosives-laden truck into a temple filled with American children. And SAC Runyon showed you just some of the other evidence that he supported Hezbollah. His phone and videos were filled with their terrorist propaganda, including his deliberate use of Hezbollah yellow. Third, this man acted under Hezbollah's direction and control. I've seen some odd attempts to explain away or even lessen this terrorist attack by claiming that he was an isolated lone wolf, but that is misleading. Terrorist propaganda is designed to activate the so-called lone wolf to act on behalf of the terrorist organization. And it makes no legal difference if the current leader of Hezbollah himself, Naim Qassem, called this man and told him to attack Temple Israel, or whether he simply heeded Hezbollah's call to kill Jews and, in his words, burn their world. So do not be misled. This terrorist acted on behalf of Hezbollah, and he intended to kill others, not just himself. He could have done that in a garage or in his basement. He did not need to plan for days, arm himself, and try to take dozens of Jewish American children with him. His death was just a means or a tool to kill as many Jews as he could. That's why his last statements were that he was on a special operation to kill as many of them as he possibly can. And it's because of the evidence presented today
All right,
that there
folks,
is
we're
no
going to take a quick break here on Live Impact News, but you've been listening over the last several minutes as FBI officials in Michigan are giving an update on that synagogue attack from earlier this month in West Bloomfield. As you hear, they're describing what they've determined about the assailant in this case, saying that this person was inspired by Hezbollah, and they're calling this an act of terrorism. As this press conference continues, we'll monitor it, but we will take that quick break. Back in 2 minutes, likely to rejoin with this if this is still in progress. Welcome back, folks, to Live Impact News. We've been listening into this live press conference out of Michigan as authorities there are giving an update on that synagogue attack from earlier in the month. We just heard from FBI briefly during the commercial break. Local authorities, it looks like the FBI is now taking questions. Let's listen in.
From WWJ, you mentioned that the sister was receiving pictures and just odd messages from her brother prior to the attack. Did she report any of this prior to this happening? Or?
So we believe that she's located in Lebanon, and based upon the communications that we see, she didn't see the additional videos that were sent until an hour after the attack.
Corey at the AP, given the evidence that you guys found, how much more sobering is this attack now than it was the day it happened?
It's still as sobering as it was on the first day. The amazingness that we had no additional fatalities based upon what this assailant was planning to do is just a testament to the preparedness of the Temple Israel security guards. And no matter what the motive, it is still something that we take very seriously, and we make sure that we can prepare for, respond, disrupt any sort of attacks like this from happening ever again.
Charlie Langton, Fox 2. Maybe for the U.S. Attorney, but did I misunderstand perhaps this guy was getting some direction from Hezbollah? And if that's the case, that you would bring a charge of providing material support, there must be someone else out there, maybe Hezbollah, that would face charges. Any other people involved with this?
What I was saying is that under the law, in order to prove direction and control, there's no legal difference whether a Hezbollah commander called this man and said, go do this attack, or whether this man consumed Hezbollah propaganda and heeded the call within the propaganda to go do an attack. When we have only the latter type of evidence, we charge material support. If we have evidence that another person's involved, then it's conspiracy. So what we have now is what I discussed.
No conspiracy. You don't believe there's any other person that assisted with this crime from this guy?
The information that we have up to this point is just as Special Agent Runyon said, information sufficient to charge providing material support. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Renelle Greer, Detroit Jewish News. In some of his messages to his sister, he said he was going to go and shoot as many people as he could. So were the explosives, do you know, was that just to take his own life if he cornered, or did he plan to?
So there's no way for me to fully know what was in his mind. That last video where he is basically issuing a statement of his why is, I plan to kill as many and I booby-trapped the car. And I think in his mind, he was trying to cause a mass amount of damage as quickly as possible to a set of over 100 kids who were just going to school that day. And that's the terribleness of this attack.
Okay. And also to clarify material support, you said he provided material support to Hezbollah. How does that, by doing that act of terrorism?
Yes, he provided himself just the same way a soldier would provide himself an attack. So he was the support.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Alan Lingo from Medlock, Detroit. Quick question. The IDF came out with information that his brother, who was the commander in Hezbollah, was killed. Was the planning for this attack for the death of his brother, or was this precipitated by the death of his brother?
So we saw that before the death of his family, before the Iran war, the assailant was consuming pro-Hezbollah materials, was affiliated with that ideology. While the mobilization and radicalization we saw in earnest come after March 9th, it still is almost immaterial because it's a terrorist attack that had nothing against people who had nothing to do with the death of his family. It was a target attack against the Jewish community here in Michigan.
The purchase of weapons and firecrackers, was that after the death of his brother?
Yes, sir. It was on March 9th and 10th, like I laid out. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi there, Faraz from Channel 7 ABC Detroit. A couple of questions, and I think you might have answered this, but just for safety. Do you, based on the evidence that you've collected, do you believe that the assailant would have carried out the attack even without his family members being killed?
So our investigation has to follow the facts, and the facts in this case are very clear that he was engaging with that ideology beforehand, and there is no, and he used that material to justify his actions to target the largest temple in Michigan. And so there's no action that justifies or contextualizes this attack to make it, well, it's because of his family or not. It's a Hezbollah-inspired act of terrorism. When it happened and in the timeline of events, it still is based on this ideology and attempt to kill as many people as possible.
So are you saying that he could have been activated any time?
I'm not in his head, and I can't opine on his motives at this point in time. If he was alive, we may be able to ask that. But I've laid out the facts that we have to date, and at the end of the day, it's a Hezbollah-inspired act of terrorism that happened on March 12th.
There's also mixed messaging in terms of like if he was directly part of Hezbollah, or was he, or is it only his brothers were working for Hezbollah? Can you shed some clarity on that?
Sure. So he was inspired by Hezbollah. The FBI has not been able to independently verify if he was indeed a member of Hezbollah. Hezbollah would like to share with us their member list. That would make the FBI's job a lot easier. But at the end of the day, he was using that ideology to radicalize and justify his attack.
One last question is this case considered closed, or any of his family members being investigated or anything like that?
It's an ongoing investigation, so I'm not going to go into who else we may be looking at and talking to. We are going to continue to review all the evidence that we have, but we wanted to come today. We felt it was an appropriate time to release the motive and the evidence that we had at this time.
It's still an open case?
It's still an ongoing open investigation, yes, sir.
Hi, Heath Gallup, CBS Detroit. I'm curious, I know you mentioned that the assailant was researching Temple Israel and he had looked up stuff like what time is lunch, but is it believed that he knew that there was preschool and that there were dozens, maybe over 100 children, young children inside of the temple at the time he attacked?
I'm not able to know what he knew. I know that he researched a significant amount of pages, web pages of various Jewish centers and facilities and schools in the area, that he spent time researching the different upcoming events at Temple Israel. I have no way to know if he knew exactly who would be there that day.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, folks, you've been listening into an FBI press conference from Michigan as we were getting an update on the attack from earlier this month on a synagogue in West Bloomfield. We've been hearing various officials talking about how they believe this was a Hezbollah-inspired act of terrorism. In their words, they say they were purposely targeting the Jewish community, this assailant was, and specifically the largest Jewish temple in Michigan. That assailant, Ayman Ghazali, who's a naturalized U.S. citizen from Lebanon, is accused of ramming a pickup truck into that synagogue back on March 12th as more than 100 students were inside attending school. He ended up fatally shooting himself after that vehicle ramming, and nobody else was killed. As you heard, this is an ongoing investigation. As we get more information, we'll definitely pass it along to you here on Live Impact. Meantime, a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes with much more. All right, folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're going to pivot back to that Artemis II press conference with the crew leading up to this Wednesday launch, giving their thoughts. By the way, there's a live look at that rocket as it's set to take off just before 6:30 on Wednesday evening. We wanted to pick up where we left off before we went to that FBI press conference in Michigan. Let's listen in now as the crew is eager to get underway.
For answering all of these questions, I just wanted to ask you guys what your mindset has been like since you arrived to Florida, knowing that the launch is coming in a few days. I just can't imagine being in your position and knowing what's ahead of me. So can you guys just share what's been going through your minds?
All four of us.
I think all four of us will answer, especially since this is the last question. This is an amazing place to be. I wish we could just walk the halls together here in the crew quarters. The folks in the kitchen that are cooking for us, their shirts are just covered in patches of previous missions. When you walk down the halls of this facility, you see names in foreign languages. You can just think about the different places that they were born, the lives they have lived, and the legacy that we're a part of. It is a really very special place. This is where humanity began reaching for the stars, and Christina and I have both launched from Russia, from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, so we just feel that huge international partnership. You really feel it when you're here. You can look around at the history and the legacy of it, and then it is surreal to jump in your car and drive out to Launchpad 39B and see this massive vehicle sitting there on the pad that has legacy all on its own. 39A and B, that's where we flew Apollo, that's where we flew shuttle. Our vehicle has parts that were flown on the space shuttle that have been reused, that have been repurposed. Our engines flew on space shuttles. Our booster segments have been reloaded and flew on space shuttles and were recovered. So it is, in a way, it's a glimpse into the past. And then when you see this vehicle on the pad, you know, you look at the size of this vehicle and you know it's going one place. It is going to space, and it is going to go there in a hurry. When those engines light, this thing is moving out. So it's surreal. I almost want to say, though, I just feel relaxed. It's good to be here. We've trained for this, and we're ready to go. Mike?
The two things that I feel are legacy, which Reed just really captured, so I won't even go more into that. But I will say the other one is just space or gray space, or protecting that relaxation, that head space. My family arrived yesterday, and so now I'm not gonna sit in my room and just study. I'm actually going to just clear my head space so that we're ready on launch day for that 10-day sprint. And it's about protecting that, I think, and also the spending time with each other. Like Reed mentioned this morning at breakfast, we had fun, and so for me, it's just protecting that emotional headspace.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of what's been shared already, and something that has come to mind several times being here at Kennedy and actually living here prior to a launch is the time that I came here with my family when I was around 10 or 11, and I often cite that trip as what cemented my interest in the space program. I came home with a couple posters from the gift shop, and it had been a dream of mine ever since. So that's something I reflect on a personal level. Professionally, it is just about one foot in front of the other for me. I think of it as a train. We are on the train right now. The system is going to get us all the way into that capsule and is going to get us launched and out to space, and our job is just to do what we've been trained for and let the training take over. So just remembering that we're here to fulfill that mission, that is what contributes to what they say, and I found it to be true. The astronauts are the calmest people on launch day, and I feel that within our group ever since we've gotten here.
Something that's been crossing my mind. My parents, I know they arrived here last night. I won't see them until we get our behind the glass visit, obviously, because we're in quarantine, but as well as launch guests. So we've all got family and friends that are coming in, and then lots of people are just coming to watch. And something that's really neat is that I love about this place is the Atlantis display, the Space Shuttle Atlantis. It's just extraordinary. So people that have the opportunity and the time to get over there and go have a look at that, it is just truly marvelous to see. And a special place for me as a Canadian to see the real Canadarm1, and it just reminds me of what you were talking about, vision of that we've had over decades that brought us to this point, just standing on the shoulders of giants. I always love to tell the story. Like, I can't imagine the courage of the people who thought, a robotic arm had never been done in space, and some Canadians, a group of Canadians, said, yeah, we'll take that on. And it was the Americans who gave us that opportunity to supply it, but some people stepped.
All right, folks, you've been listening into this press conference conference with the 4 crew members of the Artemis II, set to embark on a historic launch Wednesday evening, if all goes to plan. 6:24 is that launch time in the evening of Wednesday, and those astronauts are set to lift off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, which you're actually taking a live look at right now. 10-day journey ahead of them. They'll be looping around the Earth and the Moon. As we mentioned, this will be the first launch towards the Moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. We got some great coverage ahead of this launch itself with our Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, joined by the Chief Meteorologist of our sister station in Cleveland. So make sure you keep it here throughout Wednesday, really, as we get you ready for that launch and cover it as it happens right here on WCNC Plus. With that, we want to say thanks so much for being with us on Live Impact. We'll turn you to our news at 4, just moments away. I'll see you for the news at 5 and 6, and Live Impact once again at 7 o'clock tonight.